Chapter 1981. Thinking of this, her heart skipped a beat. She had been mesmerized by Gong Huanyan's obedient and clever facade, so she hadn't been too wary of her. If Shen Jiuli hadn't chosen her as his companion, perhaps Gong Huanyan would still be by her side now. People like Gong Huanyan were the easiest to bribe in times of crisis, so the traitor now might be Gong Huanyan. If Gong Huanyan was the traitor, she would definitely be more dangerous than Ah Huan. And Shen Jiuli seemed to have expected this day, so he took action in advance to get rid of this unstable factor for her. Devil Master, should we get rid of Ah Huan? General Manager Himu asked. Ning Xuema shook her head and suddenly smiled. Don't alert the enemy. We can also make use of her. The so-called Six Realms Talk Conference was similar to a modern cocktail party. The venue of the conference was also chosen to be a magnificent and incomparably high-class place. The Red Clouds Palace of the Immortal World was especially suitable for this. The Red Clouds Palace was located at the top of a mountain, and the only passage was the White Jade Path. Early in the morning, the kings of the various realms arrived with their elites on various kinds of transportation. Some were riding rare birds and strange beasts, some were riding cloud palanquins, and some were riding horse carriages. Of course, the horses pulling the carriages weren't ordinary horses, but the famous Pegasus. All kinds of auspicious clouds lingered, and all kinds of propitious vapors rose. Now that Luo Jiuchen was very popular in the Six Realms, it could be said that he was destined to be a person who could cover the sky with one hand. Naturally, the people of the Six Realms didn't dare to provoke him and had to give him face no matter what. Therefore, no one dared to not come when he sent an invitation. When they met on the road, they exchanged greetings with each other, and it was quite lively. The king of the underworld was a smooth and slick person. He was also very scheming and was very close to Luo Jiuchen. He was now considered Luo Jiuchen's confidant. He came on a blue luan. Because he didn't like to have many people, and this time he came for a talk, so he only brought 4 subordinates. It was easy for him to follow. His 4 subordinates' mounts weren't as fast as his bird, so he was at the front. Seeing the Red Clouds Palace in front of him, he was about to urge the blue luan to go down when suddenly, a clear bird cry came from behind him. A person riding a fire phoenix caught up to him. El King. The Netherworld King turned his head subconsciously and was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect to meet this person, but he still saluted him on the back of the green phoenix. Demon Lord. The woman on the fire phoenix was none other than Devil Master Ning Xuema. She was dressed in red and riding a fire phoenix. Her entire being was as dazzling as a burning cloud. Ning Xuema smiled. Since we've met, it must be fate. Let's go together. She flew side by side with him. Naturally, the Nether King couldn't reject her. Although he knew that the Devil Master wasn't on good terms with Lord Luo seemed to be interested in her. It was hard to say if they would become a family in the future. What's more, he also understood this Demon Lord's martial arts. Even if there were 100 of him, he wouldn't be her opponent. If he really offended her, he was afraid that he would die very miserably. Ning Xuema and he traveled together. They chatted about this and that and seemed to be very close, but they didn't talk about anything important. The Nether King didn't know what her purpose was, so he could only deal with it. Naturally, they met several groups of people from other realms along the way. Ning Xuema was also strange. Whenever she saw other people catching up with them, she would slightly distance herself from the Nether King. After those people greeted them and overtook them, she would fly side by side with him. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the main venue. Ning Xuema was slightly behind and smiled at the Nether King. Nether King, you can go down first. I have something else to do, so I'll go later. Chapter 1982. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the main hall. Ning Xuema was a little behind them. She smiled at Pluto and said, Pluto, you can leave first. I have something else to do. I'll go later. Pluto was looking forward to her saying that. Luo Jiuchen was suspicious by nature. If he found out that she was close to the Devil Lord, he might misunderstand. Therefore, he casually bowed to Ning Xuema and said, Then I'll leave first. Then, he hurriedly left as if there was a ghost chasing after him. Ning Xuema rode on the fire phoenix in the sky and then slowly flew down. After all, Ning Xuema was the Devil Lord. 3 years ago, she had swept across the 6 realms and defeated all the troublemakers. Her deeds were still fresh in people's minds. Therefore, the leaders of the 6 realms did not dare to offend her. Although they were puzzled by her sudden arrival, they still had to greet her. In the past half a month, the situation had changed drastically. Everyone in the 6 realms knew that the new Lord and the Devil Lord were not on good terms and were deliberately targeting each other. In the past half a month, the Devil Realm also behaved themselves. Almost no one in the Devil Realm left their realm. Obviously, the Devil Lord was not as good as the new Lord. Since the new Lord was targeting her, the others naturally did not dare to be close to her. After a few words of greeting, they dispersed as if they were afraid that she was infected with germs. Although there were many people in the hall, Ning Xuema's surroundings were empty. There was not a single person around her. Ning Xuema did not care. The layout of the hall was really a bit like a banquet. There were tables for all kinds of fruits, wine and dishes. There were all kinds of food, sea, land and air. There were also all kinds of flowers in the middle. Maids and servants walked around, adding all kinds of things. These big shots were not here to eat and drink but to bond. Therefore they stood in groups of 3 or 5, standing there and talking. Only Ning Xuema stood by herself. No matter where she went, the people there would find an excuse to leave on their own accord. Ning Xuema smiled slightly. She was used to this scene in the human world, but she did not expect the people in the 6 realms to be so snobbish. She did not purposely join anyone. Instead, she sat alone in a corner and slowly tasted the wine. In fact, the Netherworld King had been paying attention to her all this time. He was afraid that she would try to get close to him again, so he didn't know whether to reject her or not. He had even thought of all the excuses he would use to leave if Ning Xuema came over to talk to him. However, he didn't expect that after Ning Xuema came in, she didn't have any intention of talking to him. She didn't even look at him. When she came down, he had no choice but to come over with the others to greet her. Her expression was also indifferent. Her eyes swept over his companions but never met his gaze. It was as if she was deliberately distancing herself from him. The more she acted like this, the more uncertain the Nether King felt. When she was unusually close to him, he was worried and wished he could push her away and stay far away from her. She purposely gave him the cold shoulder. While he was relieved, he couldn't figure out what she was up to. He couldn't help but look at her from time to time, and all of this fell into a pair of eyes that were constantly monitoring this place. The owner of this pair of eyes was Luo Jiochin. Of course, with his noble status, he would not go so early to avoid losing his status. Although he didn't come, it didn't mean that his eyes didn't. At this moment he was sitting by the lake in Fantian Palace. In front of him was a water mirror. The mirror showed the scene inside and outside Wuxia Palace. Chapter 1983. The scenery shown in the water mirror could be adjusted at will, and he could look wherever he wanted. From the moment Ning Xuema appeared on the water mirror, her appearance was reflected. Ning Xuema's every action, every word, and every action were all clearly recorded on the paper. Of course there was only a picture on it and no sound. But it was enough for Luo Jiochin to see something clearly. He naturally saw the cold treatment Ning Xuema received in the hall, and he couldn't help but smile. This girl knew that the 6 realms were no longer the 6 realms of the past. If she wanted to live well in the 6 realms, she had to hold the thigh of the new lord. Only he could give her what she wanted, including status, identity, and love. Ning Xuema rode the fire phoenix and flew side by side with Pluto in the sky. The two were talking and laughing, and Luo Jiochin naturally saw them. In fact, he didn't like Ning Xuema to be too close to any man, and he felt uncomfortable when he saw them. However, in the end he was still a gloomy person. His schemes were quite deep. Seeing Ning Xuema and the Hell King talking and laughing, he couldn't rule out the possibility that she was aware of her awkward situation and wanted to form an alliance with the Hell King to her side. However, later on he saw that Ning Xuema and Hades were deliberately avoiding people when they were chatting. Furthermore, Hades was also acting a little sneakily. Thus, he began to have some suspicions in his heart. However, his suspicions were not big. Now, Ning Xuema ignored Pluto in the hall, and Pluto peeped at her from time to time. There seemed to be something wrong between the two of them. The underworld, the demon realm, and the devil realm were the easiest to form a faction, and their relationship was better than the other factions. Was there really a secret relationship between Pluto and Ning Xuema, the Devil Lord? Luo Jiochin was originally a suspicious person, and now he was even more suspicious. He also paid more attention to the subtle interaction between Ning Xuema and Pluto. He saw that Pluto finally finished chatting with others and went to the dining table to get food alone. Ning Xuema just stood up and went to the dining table to get a flat peach not far behind Pluto. And Luo Jiochin had seen Pluto pick up the flat peach and put it down. After Ning Xuema took the flat peach, she left the dining table and went back to her seat. Ning Xuema was not in a hurry to eat it. Instead, she let the peach spin in her palm. A faint white light flashed and something seemed to fall out of the peach. Ning Xuema quickly hid it in her sleeve. After that, she looked to her left and right. There was no one around her. She smiled and rested her hand on her forehead as if she was taking a nap. However, her pair of eyes looked at her sleeve for a moment before pursing her lips. She lowered her sleeve and a small wisp of light white smoke came out of her sleeve and drifted away. Luo Jiuqin's fingers suddenly clenched. Yesterday, Ah Huan's spy, who was hiding in Mo Palace, sent a message to him that there seemed to be something wrong between the Devil Lord and Pluto. The Devil Lord received a new letter, which was personally handed to him by General Manager He Mu. Ah Huan happened to be nearby, and after seeing the Devil Lord receive the letter, she took a look at it and let General Manager He Mu follow her into the hall. Ah Huan quietly followed them to eavesdrop. Her cultivation was low, and she was afraid that the two people would find out, so she didn't dare to get too close. She faintly heard something like Pluto, insider, and can't be known to others. She didn't hear the details, but she suspected that Pluto and the Devil Lord were involved, so she sent a message to Luo Jiuqin. Luo Jiuqin was already a little suspicious of Pluto, and now that he saw this scene in the water mirror, his suspicion almost burst out of his chest. Chapter 1984. Pluto. Good. Pluto. One suspicious action could be explained as a coincidence, but with so many suspicious things connected together, it was impossible for Luo Jiuqin not to be suspicious. This Pluto was the first to surrender to him and acted as if he was loyal in front of him, but it turned out that he was a spy for the Devil Lord. Ning Xuema's actions were quick and efficient. She looked at the things in her sleeves and directly destroyed them without making a sound. There were so many people in the hall so no one noticed. If Luo Jiuqin hadn't been watching her with the help of the water mirror, he wouldn't have seen all this clearly. No one knew that he could condense a water mirror to monitor the lower realm except for Shinjuli 50,000 years ago. Shinjuli was dead, and before he died, Luo Jiuqin was not released from the Heaven Dao Bell. Shinjuli wasn't a talkative person, so he probably wouldn't tell Ning Xuema about Luo Jiuqin. Ning Xuema didn't know that he had this kind of power, so it was very unlikely that she was deliberately acting in front of him. In all likelihood, Pluto was her confidant and deliberately surrendered to him to be a spy. Fortunately, he had the water mirror to see all this, otherwise he wouldn't know that he was betrayed by Pluto. Luo Jiuqin's eyes flashed with a touch of ruthlessness. At such a critical time, he wouldn't allow anyone to be disloyal to him. His eyes were fixed on the water mirror, staring at Ning Xuema's delicate face. He reached out his finger to touch the water mirror, as if he was touching her delicate cheek. "Mo, you will be mine. Back then I was the one who found you first, so I am your fated one, not that man." The water mirror shook, and a person suddenly appeared in the water mirror. To be exact, he appeared next to Ning Xuema. That person was an immortal, handsome and tall, wearing a blue robe that fluttered in the wind. Luo Jiuqin's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew this person. It was the strongest person in the immortal world, Yi Tianli. Luo Jiuqin knew about Yi Tianli. He knew that he almost became Xuema's fiancé. He also knew that one of his hands was destroyed by Ning Xuema. The relationship between the two of them was actually a little subtle. Luo Jiuqin stared at the mirror and saw that Yi Tianli seemed to say something to Ning Xuema with a smile. Ning Xuema was lazy and ignored him. However, Yi Tianli sat opposite her with a glass of wine in his hand. He smiled and seemed to be saying something. Ning Xuema's fingers tightened around the wine cup. She coldly glanced at Yi Tianli and said a few words. The two of them seemed to have quarreled with each other, causing the other people in the hall to look at them. Ning Xuema raised her hand as if she wanted to do something, but she restrained herself and turned to leave. Luo Jiuqin touched his chin. Although he couldn't hear what the two of them said, he could tell from their expressions that they didn't get along well. In all likelihood, Yi Tianli took advantage of Ning Xuema's downfall to take revenge on her. He said a few strange words that made Ning Xuema unhappy, and the two of them parted on bad terms. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Luo Jiuqin understood this very well. Perhaps he should pull Yi Tianli under his command. Although one of his hands was disabled, it wasn't incurable. If he cured Yi Tianli's hand, he wouldn't have to worry about Yi Tianli's loyalty. Luo Jiuqin was thinking when the voice-transmitting talisman on his waist suddenly lit up. He glanced at it and picked it up. A delicate female voice came from it. "My lord, should we set off?" Chapter 1985. Luo Jiuqin was calculating when the sound transmission talisman on his waist suddenly lit up. He glanced at it and picked it up. A crisp female voice came from it. "Lord, should we set off?" Luo Jiuqin smiled. "Okay." It was time for him to make an appearance. Luo Jiuqin's appearance was very grand and solemn. He came in a golden carriage pulled by 8 heavenly horses. The carriage was given to him by the Sky Emperor. It was very luxurious and tasteful, and also very suitable for his status. He came in a purple robe which was very eye-catching, as if he was the only one in the world. When the carriage appeared in the sky above Wuxia Palace, the sky was filled with rosy clouds and auspicious lights, almost blinding people's eyes. Everyone heard the noise and came out. They watched as his carriage slowly circled around the Red Cloud's palace. This time it flew down. Because he had not officially ascended to the position of the Lord of Heaven and Earth, according to the rules, everyone did not need to kowtow to him. They only needed to bow and clasp their sleeves. The higher the level, the more rules they paid attention to, so no one present was rude. Everything was done according to the rules. He didn't come alone. The person who came down from the carriage with him was a woman with a cloudy hairstyle. The immortal world did not lack beauties, and this woman was obviously the best of the best. She had a pair of phoenix eyes, a high nose and thin lips. She looked cold and strong. Ning Xuemo recognized this beauty. She was the Heavenly Emperor's younger sister, a fairy who had achieved enlightenment in cultivation. Her name was Tianhuan Clam. It was said that this woman had very high standards and would not marry anyone who was not the world's #1 man. She once liked Yi Tianli. However, Yi Tianli did not care about any woman at that time. She gave up after being rejected by him. Later, Yi Tianli took the initiative to pursue Lord Imo. Although Yi Tianli did not succeed because of Xin Jiuli's interference, it still made this fairy very uncomfortable. When she saw Ning Xuema, she always felt an inexplicable hatred and did not like her. Fortunately, Ning Xuema did not travel much in the 6 realms, so the two of them had very limited opportunities to meet. Ning Xuema had been in the God's Demons continent for more than 3 years, but she had only seen this fairy twice. After Ning Xuema became the Devil Master, she had always been lazy. As long as no one provoked her, she would not find trouble with anyone. Naturally, she didn't have any interactions with this heavenly illusion puppet. Ning Xuema only faintly felt that this woman had a trace of hostility towards her, but she didn't take it to heart. Now she was with Luo Jiuchen. She actually walked down from the carriage hand in hand and stood side by side with Luo Jiuchen. She seemed to have accepted everyone's greetings. Ning Xuema sat there without moving, playing with a glass of wine in her hand. She was the Devil Master. Even though Luo Jiuchen had secretly mocked her, her status was still there. Even if Luo Jiuchen ascended to the position of Master of Heaven and Earth, she would still be on the same level as him. Moreover, he had not ascended to this position yet. Naturally, there was no need to bow to him. Luo Jiuchen exchanged greetings with everyone. He looked noble with a sense of alienation, and in that alienation, there was a sense of intimacy between a superior and a subordinate. In short, his posture was very good. His eyebrows were dissolute and he looked proud of himself. He exchanged greetings as he walked inside. Finally, his gaze fell on Ning Xuema, who had been sitting there without moving. He smiled slightly and greeted her condescendingly. "The Devil Master is also here. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." Chapter 1986. He cupped his hands at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema smiled faintly. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Luo." She still didn't get up. Seeing her sitting there lazily without any intention of lifting her butt, Tian Huansher's pretty face tensed up slightly. She said, "Demon Master, Lord Luo is the Lord of Heaven and Earth. Isn't it unreasonable for you to just sit there when he greets you?" Ning Xuema's eyes slightly shifted as she shot a glance at the heavenly illusion puppet. She indifferently asked, "Who are you?" "I'm Tian Huanmei, the Celestial Thearch's sister. Your brother has to bow to me." "Who are you? You're poking at me like that. Do you want to talk to me about reason?" Tian Huanmei was speechless. She blushed. "I'm Lord Luo's fiancé." Ning Xuema smiled. "Oh really? Congratulations." He then changed the topic. "Don't even mention that you're his fiancé. Even if you're already his wife, he's still not the Master of Heaven and Earth. When you see me, you should still bow down." Tian Huanmei was speechless. She couldn't help but tug at Luo Jiuchen's sleeve. "Lord?" She wanted him to stand up for her. Luo Jiuchen had been staring at Ning Xuema's face, hoping to see a trace of disappointment on her face. She didn't. She didn't look disappointed at all. A dark light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Ning Xuema with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Devil Master, for my sake, can you forgive her for this bow?" Ning Xuema twirled her wine cup and answered absent-mindedly, "I've never cared about these customs. If it wasn't for your Excellency's fiancé who came to me to ask for a courtesy, I wouldn't bother to bicker with her." This small disturbance passed just like that. The conference officially began. Tian Huanmei had said that she was the new Lord Luo's fiancée and he didn't refute it. She had been calling herself the new Lord Luo's fiancée throughout the conference. This caused everyone who came this time to intentionally or unintentionally curry favor with her. Gradually, with her as the center, they would toast to her from time to time. On the other hand, Ning Xuema sat there alone. No one came to talk to her. With her as the center, there was a large empty space around her. It was unavoidably lonely, and it gave others a feeling of desolation. As for Luo Jiuqun, he was like the sun at this moment, attracting all the light to himself. No matter where he went, he was a dazzling and invincible existence. Although he had not yet ascended to the position of leader, he already had the strength of a leader. It could be said that he was the most pleased with himself at this conference. Ning Xuema was drinking wine when a shadow appeared in front of her. A person was standing in front of her. Ning Xuema raised her head and saw a handsome face full of pride. "Child Luo, what's the matter?" Luo Jiuqun sat down opposite her, shaking a glass of wine in his hand. "Nothing, I came to have a drink with you." Ning Xuema curled her lips and didn't say anything. She casually glanced at Tian Huanmei. "Aren't you afraid that she will be jealous?" Luo Jiuqun stared into her eyes. If you are willing, I am willing to give you her halo." Ning Xuema smiled. "Thank you, but I don't want it." Luo Jiuqun sighed softly. Why are you so stubborn? If you continue like this, your days will be very difficult. Why don't you walk on the sunny road and walk on the single-plank bridge?" Ning Xuema took a sip of wine. "Maybe the single-plank bridge suits me better." Chapter 1987. Luo Jiuqun saw that she was so stubborn, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. You will regret this." Ning Xuema sighed. "I've heard you say this countless times." Luo Jiuqun smiled. "Is that so? I believe this will be the last time you hear it." As if he had decided something, he got up and walked away. Ning Xuema still didn't move. She took a sip of the wine in her cup, and a waiter poured her another cup. Before she could touch her lips, her vision darkened again, and a woman sat down in front of her. There seemed to be a lot of flies and mosquitoes today. Ning Xuema looked up and saw the smug face of the sky illusion puppet. "Devil Master, you look so lonely. Snow Shark, come and have a drink with you?" Ning Xuema didn't say anything and just took a sip of wine. The sky illusion puppet looked a little condescending and smiled slightly. "Devil Master, there is a saying that a wise man submits to circumstances. Why do you always have to go against the Lord?" Ning Xuema still didn't bother to pay attention to her. The sky illusion puppet was obviously here to persuade her, and she said a lot more. The general idea was that now was different from the past. Now it was the Lord's world, and she, the Devil Master, was just a king in the devil realm. She had to be respectful to the Lord. She said a lot, but Ning Xuema just sat there and ignored her. When the sky illusion puppet first said these words to her, she was afraid of angering her, so she didn't dare to say anything too outrageous. Naturally, she didn't dare to get close to her. Later, when she saw that the other party didn't respond, she thought that Ning Xuema was afraid. The more she talked, the more excited she became. In the end, she even said that Ning Xuema, the Devil Master, should kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times when she saw her, the future queen. Before she could finish her proud words, a cup of wine poured directly over her head. She didn't look like she was drenched by a cup of wine, but more like she was drenched by a bucket of wine. Her hair and clothes were wet from head to toe, and the wine dripped down her dress. What was even stranger was that a wine glass was placed upside down on her head, shaking with her movements. The fragrance of the wine was so strong that the sky illusion puppet froze. After a while, she screamed, "You!" The wine glass above her head seemed to be unable to withstand her high decibel and exploded with a bang. She screamed again, and the pieces of the wine glass fell to the ground, making a crisp tinkling sound. The commotion here had obviously alarmed everyone in the hall, and countless gazes were directed in this direction. Ning Xuema sat there without moving, but the wine cup in her hand was gone. Although the buildings in the immortal world were steaming with auspicious energy, they were full of immortal aura. However, the heavenly prison was just like any other heavenly prison in the mortal world. It was narrow, dark, and the corners of the walls were covered with straw. Beneath their feet were cold jade bricks produced in the extreme north. When they stepped on them, they felt extremely hard and cold. Ning Xuema was sitting on a pile of straw. She was bound by chains that locked her psychic power. Whenever she moved, the chains would jingle. The heavenly prison in the immortal world was also divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. The lighter crimes were in the highest level where there were beds, tables and even windows. Through the windows one could see the sky outside. The heavier crimes were in the middle level, where the rooms were narrower and the beds were bare wooden beds. In any case, the rooms were still clean, and there were no rats or fleas jumping around. The lowest level was underground. It was dark and damp, narrow and small. If a person turned around they would be able to touch the wall. Moreover, it was only half a meter high. Even Ning Xuema, who had a petite figure, would not be able to stand up. She could only sit or squat down. Chapter 1988. There was no bed here, only a bundle of straw that could barely block the cold air from the ground. Ning Xuema was no stranger to prison after crossing over, but this was the first time she was in a prison in the immortal world. And she was in the first place, sitting directly on the lowest level. She sat cross-legged on the straw, and even the straw couldn't block out the cold air from the cold jade brick. It drilled into her skin, and she felt as if all the blood in her body was about to freeze. She sighed softly. This was really a bloody case caused by a glass of wine. She just poured a glass of wine on the head of the heavenly illusion clam. Of course, this glass of wine looked like a glass of wine, but it was actually a barrel of wine. But Ning Xuema didn't use any telekinesis, and the heavenly illusion clam was a 5th-level heaven realm cultivator. Not to mention a barrel of wine. Even if a jar of wine was poured, it should be nothing but embarrassing. But she didn't expect the heavenly illusion clam to be so weak. Not long after being poured, her whole body started to tremble and quickly froze. Before anyone could see what was going on, she directly froze into an ice lump and exploded with a bang. Her flesh and blood were all over the hall. If it was just a glass of wine, it would at most be a prank. But the person died because of this glass of wine, and in such a tragic way. The other party was the Heaven Emperor's sister, and could be considered a princess. This unforeseen event naturally caused an uproar. And Ning Xuema, the Devil Lord, became the target of the arrows. She came to the banquet alone this time, and didn't even bring a servant with her. Once she was surrounded, there was no one to help her. Moreover, her power hadn't fully recovered, and in the end, Luo Jiuchen personally took action. So in the end, Ning Xuema was caught and sent to the prison to wait for the joint trial of the 6 realms. Luo Jiuchen even found a prison partner for her, and this partner was none other than Hell King. This was because Luo Jiuchen found out that the sky illusion clam wasn't killed by the wine. Instead, it was poisoned by an ice nether poison in the wine. This ice nether poison was very powerful. If someone drank a drop of it in the wine, it would freeze their internal organs. If the wine was mixed with half a bottle and poured over a person's body, it would create the same effect as when the sky fantasy clam died. This poison was the Nether King's signature treasure, and he was the only one in the 6 realms who knew how to make it. The wine was poured by Ning Xuema, and the poison was poured by Yama. Therefore, in Luo Jiuchen's brief judgment, it was obvious that the two of them colluded to kill the Tianhuan puppets. As a result, Ning Xuema and the Nether King were captured and locked in different prisons. The Nether King naturally cried out loudly, but Luo Jiuchen found the other half bottle of ice nether poison on him. With such a witness and material evidence, it was useless no matter how loudly the Netherworld King cried out. Ning Xuema heard that the Netherworld King was locked up in the prison next door. However, the soundproofing of the prison was very good. She didn't hear any movements from the Netherworld King. Even if he was shouting, he was probably tired. The prison was surrounded by walls, and even the walls were made of cold jade bricks. You couldn't lean on them because once you leaned on them, you would be frozen. If you wanted to break free, you would have to shed a layer of skin. Ning Xuema knew the power of the cold jade bricks, so her sitting posture was very standard and she didn't touch the wall at all. You couldn't see the door in the prison. Only when the prisoners were interrogated, the front wall would slowly open a big hole, and the prisoners would be pulled out or thrown in. Ning Xuema had been sitting inside for 2 days. Because her psychokinesis was sealed by the chains on her body, she was now like an ordinary person. Chapter 1989. Ning Xuema had been sitting there for 2 days. Because her psyche power was sealed by the chains, she was now like an ordinary person. Sitting in this position for a long time inevitably made her waist and legs sore. She sat there and moved her arms and legs. She felt that all her joints were stiff and frozen into ice lumps. After a while, she slowly reached out and touched the corner behind her. An umbrella-shaped mushroom had grown out. The mushroom was cold and soft, and it was quite smooth to the touch. Ning Xuema touched it gently with her fingers. Then she bit her finger and dripped a drop of blood on it, hoping that the mushroom would grow faster. The ingredients of this poison of heavenly water were too abnormal, No wonder Shinjuli only made 46 kinds of mushrooms. The other 3 kinds grew in very strange places, and the growing conditions were very harsh. Among them, this cold underworld red mushroom was the most strange. It only grew in the darkest prison in the immortal world, and the ground was cold jade bricks. And this prison must have held a few prisoners who had been sentenced to death. Because the prison was not exposed to sunlight all year round, the resentment of the prisoners would condense and linger in the prison all year round. The most important point was that there must be a powerful demon in the prison. The demon's blood was used as a fetus to absorb the resentment of the prisoners. Only then could this strange mushroom grow. This was the most crucial ingredient to concoct the heavenly water poison. Ever since Ning Xuema knew about this herb, she had been pondering over it. After pondering for half a day, she felt that she was the only one who could complete this difficult task. So she came to this meeting with the idea of getting into big trouble and being sent to prison. She knew that Luo Jiuchen always wanted to find trouble with her and teach her a lesson so that she could really surrender to him. As long as she gave him this opportunity, he would definitely seize it. It was easy to get into big trouble at such a meeting. When Ning Xuema was thinking about it, the Tianhuan puppet came to her door. Ning Xuema's original intention was to provoke the Tianhuan puppet, and then they would fight. Then she would beat the other half to death, which would be enough for her to be sent to prison for a few days. Who would have thought that the heavenly fantasy clam would freeze and explode after being doused with a glass of wine? Ning Xuema was extremely intelligent. When Luo Jiuchen found out that the Nether King was her accomplice, she completely understood. It turned out that Luo Jiuchen also had the idea of locking her up. The heavenly illusion puppet was just a chess piece that he casually threw out. After being poured a glass of wine, the heavenly illusion puppet turned around and threw herself into Luo Jiuchen's arms. Luo Jiuchen took the opportunity to poison the heavenly illusion puppet with the ice nether poison. It seemed that Luo Jiuchen was really suspicious of the Netherworld King. This move could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Vicious and spicy enough. As a result, Ning Xuema was sent to the celestial prison as a matter of course. Moreover, it was very much to her liking. She lived in the most important prison in the celestial prison. That bastard Luo Jiuchen was too understanding. And in order to teach her a big lesson after locking her up in the celestial prison, he did not ask about her at all. He probably wanted to lock her up for 10 days to half a month to dampen her spirit and then interrogate her. The small mushrooms that Ning Xuema planted could only be harvested after 3 days. Now that 2 days had passed, she only needed to wait for 1 more day. When the small mushrooms were fully grown and ready to be harvested, she would be able to leave this damn place. She would be able to leave freely without taking away a piece of cloud. Since she dared to come here with a plan, she naturally had a way to escape. Now she just had to wait for the small mushrooms to grow up. She closed her eyes to rest. Suddenly, the wall in front of her creaked and slowly split to both sides. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be? He was going to interrogate her today? That bastard Luo Jiuchen couldn't keep his cool? Chapter 1990. A person appeared at the door. He wore a flowing purple robe, had a tall and handsome figure and slightly curved lips. Even if he wasn't smiling, he seemed to be smiling. It was Luo Jiuchen. Ning Xuema had been in the dark for a long time. When she saw the light outside, it was a little dazzling, so she closed her eyes. She didn't move. The moment the door opened, she used the back of her robe to cover the small mushroom. I've made you suffer. Luo Jiuchen bent over and walked in, sitting across from her. He looked her up and down, and pity appeared in his eyes. You've lost weight. Ning Xuema ignored him and was too lazy to open her eyes. It's not that I want to make things difficult for you, but the situation forced me. You shouldn't have killed her. Now that the Celestial Emperor has lost his sister, he's unwilling to forgive you, Luo Jiuchen said. Ning Xuema's lips curled up, but she didn't say anything. From what she knew, the Celestial Emperor and this sister didn't have a good relationship. This sister of his was strong and domineering. She liked to use her brother's name to cause trouble, but she didn't respect her brother at all. When she was angered, she once pointed at the Celestial Emperor's nose and called him a good-for-nothing. She and her 3 sisters-in-law were like fire and water, saying that they were outsiders and that she and the Celestial Emperor were blood relatives. Ning Xuema felt that the Celestial Emperor's family might be setting off firecrackers to celebrate the death of this Tian Huangkleng. Unwilling to forgive? Even if he really was unwilling to forgive, it was instigated by Luo Jiuchen. This was originally a vicious scheme to frame her, and it was led by Luo Jiuchen. At this time it was useless to talk to him and it would be a waste of her saliva. So no matter what Luo Jiuchen said, Ning Xuema didn't say a word. Luo Jiuchen said a lot, but it was nothing more than that he pitied her in his heart. However, as the leader he had to be fair. If he forcefully stood up for her, the Six Realms wouldn't accept it. His words were full of helplessness. In the end he changed the topic. Amo, the situation is very unfavorable for you. If this goes on, I'm afraid you'll have to go to the Lightning God platform. Even if I want to protect you, I'm afraid I can't do it without a proper reason. Only if you change your identity then I can stand up for you. The Lightning God platform was equivalent to the Immortal Execution platform, and it was the place where the Immortal Realm punished criminals on death row. Generally speaking, once someone was on that platform they could forget about coming down. The criminals would be struck by heavenly lightning on that platform. If it was light, the lightning would scorch their flesh and leave behind a few strands of their soul for reincarnation. If it was serious, it would directly cause one's soul to scatter and vanish from the world. Ning Xuema finally opened her eyes. What identity? Luo Jiuchen looked at her clear black and white eyes and his heart swayed. Even he didn't know what was wrong with him. Every time he saw Imo like this, he had the urge to hug her. He stared at her. The best identity is my wife. No one would dare to make things difficult for the wife of the Lord of Heaven and Earth. She knew that this was his ultimate goal. Ning Xuema smiled and declined to comment. Isn't it said that if the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the common people? Luo Jiuchen chuckled. That's just an excuse to fool the common people. People with honorable identities naturally dissociate themselves from the law. Ning Xuema glanced at him. Isn't the heavenly Tao particular about fairness? Aren't you afraid that the heavenly Tao will punish you? Luo Jiuchen sighed. Imo, you're too naive. Those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. How can there be so much fairness in this world? The heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao only protects the Six Realms. It's fine as long as it doesn't go astray. Chapter 1991. Luo Jiuchen sighed. Imo, you're too naive. Those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. How can there be so much fairness in this world? The heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao only protects the Six Realms as long as it doesn't go astray. The heavenly Tao doesn't care about small things whether it's fair or not. Ning Xuema sat there hugging her knees and smiled. So that's how it is. No wonder you keep doing evil. The heavenly Tao doesn't care about small things. Luo Jiuchen was stunned and blinked. Imo, what are you saying? I don't understand. Ning Xuema chuckled. Luo Jiuchen, let's not do anything underhanded. There are no outsiders here, so let's be frank. I know you're the one behind all this. There's no poison in the wine I poured on Tianhuan Lei. It's your hand that's poisonous. The poor Tianhuan Lei relied on you and threw herself into your arms when she was wronged. But you took the opportunity to poison her and take her life. She became a chess piece that you used to threaten and frame me. It's fine if you frame me. There can't be two tigers on one mountain. You want to be the master of heaven and earth, so it's reasonable that you can't tolerate me. But why did you frame the Netherworld King? He's loyal to you. Aren't you afraid that you'll disappoint the people who follow you? Luo Jiuchen looked at her for a long time, sighed and smiled. Imo is really smart. You figured out the key point so quickly. I like it. His lips curled up again. You don't care about yourself, but you want to get rid of the Netherworld King? Ning Xuema took a breath. He's innocent. There's no need to implicate the innocent in our grudge. Luo Jiuchen sneered. Innocent? He's relying on me, but secretly he's your spy. He wants to be a spy by my side. How can I tolerate him? Ning Xuema frowned. Who said he's my spy? My relationship with him is ordinary. What are you suspecting? He's innocent. If you still have a conscience, let him go. The more Ning Xuema pleaded for Pluto, the angrier Luo Jiuchen became. He suspected that Pluto was disloyal to him. Luo Jiuchen smiled coldly. He definitely can't let it go. I have to give the Six Realms an explanation for this. If I want to protect you, I can only sacrifice him. Imo, if you know what's good for you, you'll agree to my request. I'll push all the blame onto the Nether King and bring you out safely. The premise is that you have to cooperate with me. Ning Xuema didn't say anything. She didn't know if she had heard it or not. Luo Jiuchen didn't rush her. I'll give you 3 more days to think about it. Miss Imo, he's still waiting for you at home. Can you bear to let him lose his mother again? Ning Xuema suddenly opened her eyes. Luo Jiuchen, one of the 3 conditions you agreed to was not to harm anything that originally belonged to Xinjuli. Nianma was his son. If he dared to hurt him, it would be a violation of the oath. You will never be the master of heaven and earth again. You will be locked in the heavenly Dao Bell. Luo Jiuchen smiled. Don't worry, I will remember. I don't even want to hurt you. If you didn't do anything wrong this time, I wouldn't be able to arrest you. Well, you can think about it again. Do you want to walk on the sunny path or walk on your lonely wooden bridge? He turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly his nose twitched. Why is there a smell of blood here? Ning Xuemo raised her hand. The chain on her wrist made a clanking sound. A layer of skin on her wrist was scratched by the chain and blood oozed out. Chapter 1992. She didn't speak, but it was obvious where the smell of blood came from. Luo Jiuchen's footsteps paused. You've suffered again? He took out a bottle of medicine from nowhere and wanted to apply it on her. Ning Xuema abruptly withdrew her hand. Luo Jiuchen's fingers stiffened. He took a deep breath and indifferently said, This place is not a good place. You should leave a way out for yourself. He placed the bottle on the ground and walked out with large strides. The prison closed again. Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief. She waved her sleeve and swept the bottle of medicine left by Luo Jiuchen to a corner. With a flip of her wrist, a blood-red talisman slowly appeared in her palm. She looked at the talisman for a moment and gently stroked it with her fingers. The talisman lit up and there was a conversation inside. It was the conversation between her and Luo Jiuchen. Ning Xuema's lips hooked up. She let out a sigh of relief and put the talisman back into the storage space again. Luo Jiuchen still underestimated her. When she was caught, Luo Jiuchen used a spell to search her clean. Even the things in the storage space were not spared. So when Ning Xuema first came into the prison, it could be said that she was empty-handed and had nothing. Her telekinesis was trapped by the demon sealing chain, so she couldn't condense any other magic treasures. That was why Luo Jiuchen was so unscrupulous when he spoke just now. He dared to admit and say anything. Because he knew that his words couldn't be spread outside and the people outside couldn't hear. And Ning Xuema couldn't do anything to him. Even if she ran out and yelled, who would listen to her? He didn't expect that the demon sealing chain on Ning Xuema's body had been tampered with. Ning Xuema still had 1/3 of her mental power. It was easy to secretly condense a blood-red sound storage talisman. With this sound storage talisman, it would be an irrefutable evidence to overthrow Luo Jiuchen in the future. Putting away the sound storage talisman, Ning Xuema turned back to look at the strange little mushroom. The little thing was unharmed and stood there red. It looked exceptionally delightful. Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief. Not bad. Everything is going according to plan. As for the pain she is suffering right now, it's just a little flesh wound. For her it's nothing. She only needed to endure for one more day and she would almost succeed. A day passed very quickly. At noon on the second day the small mushroom finally lit up, and the mushroom cap grew bigger. Ning Xuema immediately picked it up. After processing it a little, she put it into her storage space. She let out a long sigh of relief. Success. Now, all she had to do was to wait for reinforcements to arrive at midnight. Because this little mushroom needed to be nourished by her blood at all times, she had to give it a drop of blood every hour. Ning Xuema had cultivated it with great difficulty, so she didn't dare to lose it. Therefore she didn't even sleep for the past 3 days. Now that the little mushroom had been successfully harvested, Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief, but also felt sleepy. She yawned and closed her eyes, wanting to take a nap to pass the time. But as soon as he closed his eyes, he immediately fell asleep. The sparkling lake, the winding wooden corridor, the soaring serpent and the black tortoise squatting on both sides of the road, everything was so familiar. Ning Xuema floated in the air and looked at the little girl fishing by the lake. She was a little confused. She had transmigrated. She transmigrated again. Chapter 1993. She had traveled back in time again. The little girl by the lake was the little devil, Xuema. She still looked 12 or 13 years old. At this moment she was squatting by the lake and fishing seriously. There were already a few fish bubbling in the bucket next to her. Her fishing posture was a little strange. She squatted there with a golden knife. It was the first time in Ning Xuema's life that she had seen such a fishing posture. She could not help but take a few more glances. She had little Xuema's memory. Little Xuema was lively and could not sit still. Today she was squatting here and fishing without moving. It was rarer than the West. Ning Xuema was also very familiar with this big lake. It was the big lake in the Fantian Palace that was covered with colorful rays. This big lake was full of spiritual power, and the fish in the lake were also colorful. From time to time, There were colorful waves flashing in the fish bucket. Little Shuema held the fishing rod firmly in her hand, but there was a little impatience on her face. She muttered, "Fish, fish, take the bait. Fish, fish, take the bait." Ning Shuema looked at her bucket and saw that there were already 8 fish bubbling in it. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. She knew very well how difficult it was to catch the fish in this lake. The bait needed to be very special, and the hand holding the fishing rod could not shake even a little. As long as the hook was cast, it could not move before the fish was caught. It was silent like a statue for a long time. This kind of fish was also known as the time-sharing fish. As long as the fishing method was right, one could catch one in 2 hours. In the beginning, the characteristics of this fish were told to her by little Nianma. At that time she commented, "This is a crazy fish raised by a crazy person." It turned out that this kind of fish existed 50,000 years ago. She had personally fished it 50,000 years ago. Ning Shuema looked at little Shuema. She did not expect this little girl to be so patient. Looking at the fish in her bucket, she had been here for 16 hours. Where was Shinjuli? Where was he? Ning Shuema already knew that the time in her time travel was parallel to the time in the other world. A few days had passed over there and a few days should have passed over here as well. According to what Mother Earth said, little Shuema fell into the hands of the devils and was tortured for 10 days before being rescued by Luo Jiuchen. In that case, the substitute should have fallen into Luo Jiuchen's hands. That bastard was not an ordinary kind of shrewd. She wondered if he had realized that the one he had rescued was a substitute. How did Shinjuli spend the past half a month? Before changing history, when little Shuema was suffering in the demon world, Shinjuli was recuperating in a nameless mountain. By the time he recovered, little Shuema had already begun to destroy the world, creating a disaster. But this time Shinjuli was fine. He should have gone to check on the substitute, right? At the very least he should see what Luo Jiuchen was up to. Could it be that he wasn't here now because he was keeping an eye on Luo Jiuchen? Ning Shuema tried her best to think about the history that Mother Earth had once told her. In that history, little Shuema was rescued by Luo Jiuchen 10 days later. She then recuperated at Luo Jiuchen's place for 7 days before recovering completely. At that time, Luo Jiuchen used some unknown method to make little Shuema recover to her original state in a short span of 7 days. Her cultivation even doubled a few times. On the 8th day, little Shuema killed her way back to the demon realm and massacred that place. According to that history, exactly 18 days had passed. Could that substitute have replaced little Shuema to destroy the world? Did Shinjuli get rid of her? Countless thoughts whizzed to and fro in Ning Shuema's mind, and her heart thumped wildly. Chapter 1994. Countless thoughts whizzed through Ning Shuema's mind, and her heart thumped wildly. She really wanted to find Shinjuli. She had not seen him for only half a month, but she already missed him a lot. However, ever since she transmigrated here, her soul had been floating around little Shuema. She couldn't go more than 3 feet away from her, and she couldn't look for him anywhere else either. Since she couldn't move, she could only float in the air and watch. She actually wanted to pounce on little Shuema and possess her. However, she didn't know if it was the wrong time, but she couldn't pounce on her and almost slipped into the fish barrel. Ning Shuema was actually a little flustered. It would be fine if she transmigrated in Mo Palace, but she transmigrated in the celestial prison. The ground was so cold. If she stayed here and couldn't go back, would her body on the other side be frozen into a lump of ice? She didn't know what would happen if the people who came to pick her up at night saw her dead and stiff body. Although she really wanted to see Shinjuli, this was really not a good time to transmigrate. Ning Shuema even wanted to go back quickly. However, she didn't transmigrate by her own will, and she didn't go back by her own will either. She struggled a few times in the air, but she was pulled back to within 3 feet of little Shuema. Therefore, after a long fruitless struggle, she could only hug her arms in a corner and watch little Shuema fishing in boredom. Then she was surprised to find that little Shuema changed her posture when she fished. She changed her posture every time she fished a fish. When Ning Shuema first saw her, she was fishing in a squatting position. After she caught a fish, she changed to fishing in a golden rooster position. The last posture was leaning forward, which was a difficult posture like an airplane taking off. Ning Shuema was dumbfounded. She didn't understand what was wrong with her. However, seeing that she had maintained the same posture for 2 hours without moving, she knew that little Shuema had recovered a lot of her kung fu. Alright. When she left, Shinjuli promised that he would heal her in 10 days. Now more than half a month had passed. Could it be that little Shuema was fishing in such a strange position to recover her kung fu? Indeed, it was quite torturous. Ning Xuema felt tired for little Xuema. When the 10th fish was caught, little Xuema shouted happily and threw the fish into the bucket. She lowered her head and rubbed her sore arms and legs. Then she picked up the bucket and ran away. Ning Xuema naturally followed behind her. Little Xuema's kung fu had almost recovered. She lifted the bucket and flew straight to Shinjuli's study. "Julie, I've caught 10 fish." Little Xuema shouted before she entered the room. There was no movement in the room. Shinjuli always had the ability to remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Even if he was in the room, he would not answer. Little Xuema seemed to understand him deeply. After shouting, she pushed the door and went in. The study was quiet. Shinjuli was not in the study. Little Xuema was stunned. Ning Xuema also quickly glanced around the study. There were open books and notebooks on the desk. Shinjuli obviously went out in a hurry. The books and notebooks were open. Ning Xuema first looked at the words on the notebooks. Her heart skipped a beat. The handwriting on the notebooks was a little messy. There were a few words: time travel, future, past. Then she looked at the open book. There were some very advanced kung fu on it. They were all about space jumping and so on. Chapter 1995. Ning Xuema clenched her fists. Could it be that Shinjuli in this life had realized that she was from the future, so he was studying this kind of technique? The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. Just as she was about to read the content of the book again, little Xuema turned around and ran out. Ning Xuema naturally couldn't help but follow her out. "Jiuli, Jiuli." Little Xuema shouted loudly. No one answered. Only little Xuema's voice echoed in the vast Fantian palace. "Did he go out?" "No, he always tells me when he goes out." Little Xuema frowned and muttered to herself. After thinking for a while, she simply searched the entire Fantian palace. After half an hour, little Xuema finally found Shinjuli in a waterside pavilion. Seeing the waterside pavilion, Ning Xuema couldn't help but sigh. 50,000 years later, that bastard Luo Jiuchen lived in this waterside pavilion, so she felt a little scared when she saw it now. The waterside pavilion was actually very elegant. It had light blue floating gauze, ebony structure and cornices that were arched like swallows. The windows in the waterside pavilion were all open. Looking in from the window, they saw Shinjuli sitting upright beside a long table. His eyes were slightly closed as if he was meditating, but at the same time, he seemed to be lost in thought. There was wine on the long table, but there were no dishes. There were a few wine jars lying around him. Ning Xuema was stunned. She had been in contact with Shinjuli for so long, and she had always seen him drinking tea. She had never seen him drinking wine, let alone so much. Ning Xuema walked around him and looked at his slightly closed eyes. She was a little puzzled. Was he asleep or meditating? Also, did he drink all this wine? He didn't look drunk at all. "Julie?" Little Xuema walked in with the bucket in her hand. Shinjuli, who had been sitting with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes. When he first opened his eyes, he looked a little confused. He looked at little Xuema's face and looked at her without saying anything. "Julie, I've caught 10 fish today. Can you stew it for me now?" Little Xuema sat down opposite him and rubbed her legs. "My legs are so sore." Shinjuli responded. His reaction was a little slow, and so was his thinking. His eyes fell on the bucket of fish again, but he didn't do anything. Ning Xuema had never seen Shinjuli like this before. She widened her eyes in curiosity. Was he really drunk? Little Xuema rubbed her legs for a while. When she raised her head, she saw that he was still staring at the bucket of fish. She was a little surprised and waved her little hand in front of his eyes. "Jiuli?" Her little hand was suddenly held by his hand. His eyes finally turned back to her face. His eyes were very calm and there didn't seem to be much difference from usual. Even his waist was straight and his sitting posture was upright as if he was meditating. He stared at her little face and didn't respond for a long time. Little Xuema was puzzled. She was scared by his stare. "Jiuli, what's wrong with you?" Shinjuli slowly raised one hand and gently brushed her hair. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Xuema?" He finally opened his mouth and his voice was steady. "Why aren't you back yet?" "Little Xuema." Wasn't she right in front of him? "I've already started to restore your kung fu. Why aren't you back yet?" Little Xuema hugged one of his arms. "I've always been in front of you. Jiuli, what's wrong with you?" Shinjuli looked at her and then looked at the bucket of fish beside her feet. He whispered, "I can't find a way. I can't find a way." Chapter 1996. Little Shuema was confused, but Ning Shuema's heart skipped a beat. Shenjuli was looking for her. I'm here. Ning Shuema was unable to possess little Shuema's body at the moment, so she simply flew in front of him and hovered in front of him. I'm here. Julie, I'm here. Unfortunately, Shenjuli could not see her. He sat there for a while, then suddenly walked out with little Shuema's bucket of fish. Little Shuema was speechless. She was afraid that he would release the fish she had caught, so she quickly followed him out. Jiuli, I want to eat all the fish you made. Shenjuli did not release her but found the biggest fish in the bucket. He quickly scraped the scales and removed the internal organs. The fish was bloody. He shook it with his hand, then picked it up and looked at it. I need to wash it. Suddenly he jumped into the water. Little Shuema was speechless. Ning Shuema was speechless. Now she was sure that Shenjuli was really drunk. Even if he was drunk, he was so different. He looked normal, but the things he did were very different from usual. The moment Shenjuli jumped into the water, he sank to the bottom like a cannonball. Little Shuema waited anxiously by the shore for a while, but she did not see him emerge. She was worried and shouted at the lake a few times, but there was no movement from the lake. Even the ripples caused by him jumping into the water had disappeared. Oh no, did he drown at the bottom of the water? Ning Shuema turned around and jumped into the water without thinking. However, after she jumped into the water, she remembered that she was a spirit. She could only float on the water surface and could not go down at all. What? Little Shuema finally jumped into the water. Little Shuema was not good at swimming. She was probably too anxious, so her legs cramped not long after she jumped into the water. She struggled in the water and choked on a mouthful of water. Oh no! Little Shuema failed to save her and drowned again. Ning Shuema rushed over and tried to pull her away. However, the moment her fingers touched Shuema's body, Ning Shuema's vision went black. A moment later, she felt her nose and throat burning, and there was a buzzing sound in her head. It was obviously a symptom of choking. She suddenly opened her eyes and her lips twitched. She had successfully possessed another body. Ning Shuema was a good swimmer. She rushed to the surface of the water in an instant. After taking a deep breath, she dived into the water. She quickly found Shenjuli at the bottom of the water. After seeing his condition, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Shenjuli was actually sitting upright in the water, holding the fish that he had just slaughtered. His eyes were drooping as if he was meditating or lost in thought. He probably heard the sound of water, so he looked up and saw her rushing down. He was a little puzzled. What are you doing here? His skill was high, so he could speak in the water. Ning Shuema had the urge to give him a slap. Why couldn't he meditate anywhere? Why did he come to the bottom of the water to meditate? She thought that he had fainted from choking. She went forward and pulled his sleeve, sending him a telepathic message, "Follow me up." Shenjuli raised his sleeve and avoided her pulling. He frowned slightly. "Let me be alone. You're too noisy." Ning Shuema was speechless. She swam to the opposite side of him and looked at him. His expression had been very calm, and his every move revealed a kind of innate elegance. He was really no different from usual. However, the things he did were a little silly. Ning Shuema, who was originally troubled, could not help but laugh. She simply waited for him at the bottom of the water to see how long he would stay there. Chapter 1997. She decided to stay at the bottom of the lake and wait for him. She wanted to see how long he would stay there. Shenjuli began to perform spells in the water. His fingers moved swiftly, changing his hand gestures from time to time. A white light emerged from his fingertips, stirring up whirlpools of various sizes in the water. Ning Shuema was almost swept away by the whirlpools of various sizes. She hurriedly reached out and grabbed his sleeve, trying to stabilize her body. Shenjuli felt that she was a burden. He waved his sleeve and Ning Shuema flew out happily. Ning Shuema was speechless. She steadied herself and turned around to look at him. She saw Shenjuli sitting in the middle of the whirlpool. The big whirlpool beside him was surrounded by small whirlpools. It looked a little strange. However, he was sitting there motionless, as firm as Mount Tai. What kind of kung fu was he practicing? The Divine Lord was a little strange these days. Ning Shuema touched her chin and pondered. After she successfully possessed Shuema, she received little Shuema's memories for the past half a month. After knowing that she had left, Shenjuli realized that the person in his arms had changed. He was not very calm. For the past 2 days, he had been constantly probing her. From time to time he would feel her pulse. Even at night, when the two of them slept in the same room, little Shuema would occasionally wake up and find him standing in front of her bed, looking down at her. Every time she woke up, he would look at her for a while, as if he was trying to find something from her eyes. Then he sighed, rubbed little Shuema's head and said, "Go to sleep." Then he went back to his own bed. His abnormal behavior made little Shuema puzzled, but even if she asked him, she wouldn't be able to get any answers. Therefore, little Shuema attributed all these to the Divine Lord's recent divine path. 2 days later, the Divine Lord began to study something in his study room day and night. However, he kicked little Shuema out to fish by the lake. Moreover, he was fishing in a fancy way. The number of fish that needed to be caught increased exponentially. If she caught 1 fish today, she would need to catch 2 the next day. Little Shuema could not sit still. At first, she fished by the lake for a whole day, but she did not catch a single fish. She could not catch anything she would not eat. Little Shuema had lost her psychokinesis, so she could not abstain from food. Although she was not as hungry as ordinary people, her stomach would still be hungry if she did not eat for a day. Therefore, she was exceptionally well behaved the next day. She forced herself to be patient and fished for half a day. Finally, she caught a palm-sized fish. She happily went to show it to Shinjioli. Shinjioli then used the fish to make a soup for her. Although little Shuema was small, her appetite was not small. Such a small fish was not enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. She begged Shinjioli to find more food for her. However, once Shinjioli hardened his heart, he would not listen to her. Since he had said in advance that she would eat as many fish as she caught, he did not leave any room for negotiation. He did not even give her an extra fish bone. For the sake of her stomach, little Shuema had to fish by the lake all day long. This Divine Lord had so many rules that it made people angry. When he asked little Shuema to fish, she had to change several positions after catching a few fish. She could not be careless at all. Little Shuema thought that he could not see her in the study room. She also thought that some of the positions were too difficult and tiring. Therefore, she played tricks a few times and used the most comfortable position to catch a few fish. She thought that she could get away with it. However, she did not expect that although Shinjioli was not watching her by the lake, it was as if he had installed a radar on her body. He could tell which fish she caught in troubled waters at a glance. Chapter 1998. Shinjioli's punishment for her sneaky behavior was horrible. If she played any tricks, he would release 2 more of them. There were 2 days when little Shuema didn't eat any fish. Instead, she was punished with a few fish. After such a punishment, little Shuema finally learned her lesson. She didn't dare to play any tricks in front of him. Fishing was really a way to train one's willpower. After being tortured by him for more than 10 days, little Shuema became much quieter and more obedient. More importantly, the fish was very nutritious. Not only did it help her recover quickly, but it also helped her to recover her power. The only drawback was that it was too tiring to fish in different ways. Every day her back would ache and her legs would cramp. If it wasn't for little Shuema's leg cramping in the water, Ning Shuema wouldn't have been able to possess the body successfully. Ning Shuema remembered that before she left, Shinjioli promised her that he would help her recover her power in 10 days. He said that she would suffer a little. Could it be that this strange fishing method was a way to recover her power? Actually, it wasn't that bad. More importantly, little Shuema was the one who suffered the most. After she arrived, little Shuema's power of mind had recovered by half. She had gotten a great deal. Ning Shuema was absorbing little Shuema's memory while she was thinking. She wanted to see when the Almighty would wake up. She had never seen Shinjioli drunk before. This was an eye-opener. She swam over slowly and approached the edge of the whirlpool. She transmitted her voice to him. "Jioli, what are you doing?" Shinjioli lowered his eyes slightly. His fingers were still forming a seal as if he didn't hear her. There were more and more whirlpools around him. These whirlpools were in all kinds of shapes. There were whirlpools in the shape of tornadoes, mushrooms and even 6-petal flowers. Ning Shuema tilted her head and watched. She didn't quite understand why Shinjioli had created so many whirlpools. Every time Shinjioli created a new kind of vortex, he would reach out his finger to feel the vortex for a moment, then shake his head as if it was not the vortex he wanted. Then he would look down and think for a moment, then continue to create a new one. Ning Shuema had once studied the books in Shinjioli's study room. Many of the books were personally written by Shinjioli. In other words, a lot of his martial arts were self-created and not learned from others. Could it be that he was creating a new cultivation technique? Ning Shuema suddenly thought of the words he had written in his study: time travel, the past, the future, and her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he was also researching ways to travel to the past and the future when he was drunk? Looking at those vortexes again, they looked a little like the spacetime vortexes that one would see when traveling through spacetime. She remembered that when she was with Shinjuli, she seemed to have unintentionally mentioned spacetime vortexes. His heart was actually still thinking about finding her, wasn't it? Ning Xuema's heart suddenly felt warm. She now understood that 50,000 years ago, the Almighty's feelings for little Xuema were more like the love an elder had for a younger generation. At the very least, he hadn't really fallen in love with her, but everything had changed. After she had traveled through time, Shinjuli had fallen in love with her after she had traveled through time. That was why he couldn't forget her. It was obviously the same body and the same soul, but they had two different personalities. She didn't know if Shinjuli thought that she had schizophrenia. He was actually able to distinguish between them so quickly, which was also a kind of ability. Ning Xuema looked at him with interest. It was rare to see a drunk almighty. Let's do a small survey. What time do people usually read books? Roll around all kinds of tickets? Ah. Chapter 1999. Shinjuli was so focused on creating the whirlpool that he even forgot about the fish that he had already slaughtered and threw it aside. The fish was swept out by the whirlpool and rushed to Ning Xuema's side. Ning Xuema caught it and looked at Shinjuli, then looked at the fish in her hand and touched her rumbling stomach. She said decisively, "Guru, you practice here first. I'll go up and roast the fish and wait for you. Turn around and swim upstream." She had just swum up 2 or 3 meters, but before she could jump out of the water, she suddenly heard the sound of water splashing. Her waist was tightly held and she fell into the arms of a person. Ning Xuema turned around and saw Shinjuli's shining eyes. "What, did you call me?" His voice was slightly hoarse. This person was drunk but still so fast. Ning Xuema blinked her eyes and her eyes were full of innocence. "Julie?" Shinjuli's arms stiffened slightly and the strength of holding her loosened a little. "No, what did you call me just now?" Ning Xuema blinked again. "Divine Lord?" Shinjuli stared into her eyes and Ning Xuema stared back at him curiously. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Finally, the light in Shinjuli's eyes dimmed and he slowly let go of her. He raised his hand to rub his forehead and whispered, "Was I hallucinating?" His voice was very soft, but Ning Xuema still heard it clearly. She sincerely explained to him, "I think you're drunk. It's not a hallucination." Shinjuli frowned and returned to his indifferent look. "I'm not drunk. I never get drunk when I drink." Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Generally, people who got drunk would never admit that they were drunk. This was common sense, so Ning Xuema automatically ignored his previous explanation. However, she was interested in the last sentence. People who were drunk often had to think in reverse. He said that he would never get drunk after drinking. Did that mean that he would get drunk every time he drank? Ning Xuema's eyes sparkled. Shinjuli's body sank down again, as if he wanted to sink back into the water to meditate. Ning Xuema ignored him and continued to swim upstream. When she was about to reach the surface of the water, she turned back to look at him. He was slowly sinking. The great deity was indeed a great deity. Even in the water he could sink as deep as a Buddha. The water was extremely clear. Ning Xuema watched as he slowly sank, his clothes floating in the water. That scene was too beautiful to behold. "Almighty, I deeply feel that your sinking water diagram can also be painted into a painting and framed for people to worship." Ning Xuema could not help but tease him. She turned over and swam upstream again. Her kung fu had not recovered much. After staying in the water for so long, she felt a little suffocated. She had to come up to the surface to breathe in the fresh air. However, before her mouth and nose could come out of the water, her body was pulled by a huge force and suddenly sank down. Almost in the blink of an eye, her body was locked in an embrace again, and she could no longer move. Shinjuli looked down at her. His deep blue eyes seemed to be turbulent, but his face was calm. He slowly said, "I heard it. It's not a hallucination. You called me Almighty." Ning Xuema pretended to be confused. "What's wrong with calling you Almighty? You're back, aren't you?" Shinjuli held her body tightly. "Haven't I always been here?" Ning Xuema blinked again. She resisted the urge to reach out and hug his neck. Every time she fell into his arms, she wanted to hug him back. Shinjuli did not say anything. He just kept looking at her. Chapter 2000. However, Xuema didn't want to stay in the water with him. She was really suffocating to the point of panic. She could not help but struggle a little. "Well, let go of me first. Let me go up and take a breath first. I'm suffocating. Shinjuli's eyes flashed again. Suddenly, he lowered his head and kissed her on the lips, making her swallow the rest of her words. Ning Xuema's head buzzed. She had always been unable to resist Shinjuli's kisses, especially when they had not seen each other for half a month and had missed each other so much. She could not help but open her mouth slightly, wanting to respond to him. However, he took a breath first. That breath still had a faint smell of wine, but it was unusually refreshing. It went into her lungs and opened her lungs, which were a little lacking in oxygen because of suffocation. It was so comfortable. Ning Xuema could not help but stick out the tip of her tongue to tap his teeth, wanting to get a little more from his mouth. Shinjuli's eyes darkened, and he directly kissed her deeply. Ning Xuema did not know how many times he had kissed her in her life. Once he started, she automatically began to respond. Their lips and tongues intertwined. Their breaths and movements were incomparably familiar. It was as if they could ignite the fire in the deepest part of their hearts, making it burn automatically when their lips and tongues intertwined. A deep kiss was enough to make each other's blood boil. A deep kiss seemed to be able to soothe the uneasiness and anxiety in their hearts. During the deep kiss, Ning Xuema could not help but wrap her arms around his neck. It was a familiar action, a familiar person, and a familiar desire. After the kiss, Ning Xuema opened her eyes and saw Shinjuli's eyes that seemed to be able to drown people. At this moment, his eyes were shining. He had recognized her. He must have recognized her from this kiss. Little Xuema was not as skilled as her, and her cooperation would not be so high. Damn it, he actually used this method to verify. Ning Xuema raised her hand and saw that she did not grow older. She still looked like a 12 or 13-year-old. Hey, you're molesting a young girl. Ning Xuema accused him first. However, her emotions were still surging, so her voice was a little hoarse. It didn't sound like she was criticizing him, but more like she was acting coquettishly. Shinjuli didn't say anything, as if he was afraid that she would run away. His left arm was still around her, but his right hand flashed a ball of white light that enveloped her whole body. A moment later he smirked. How about this? Ning Xuema didn't need to look at herself to know that she had grown bigger again. She had become more suitable for him to do whatever he wanted. Although they were in the water, she could feel that his body was burning hot. The arm around her waist was so hot that it wanted to pull her into his body. His body temperature made her heart beat wildly. After all, they had done it so many times that she was already familiar with his body. He looked at her with a deep gaze and his lips curled into a faint smile, like a child who had just pulled a prank. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. He was usually cold and arrogant. It was the first time she saw such an expression on the Almighty's face. Was he still drunk or was he already sober? Ning Xuema was a little uncertain, so she deliberately provoked him. You're forcing me to mature. It doesn't count. My original body is that of a young lady, 1,200 years old, Xuema. Shinjuli touched her lips with his finger and said in a low voice, if you didn't eat that lousy flour, your child could be a soy sauce now. Ning Xuema was shocked. The Almighty also knew how to talk about soy sauce. Needless to say, the Almighty remembered those words that she used to whisper in his ear. Chapter 2001. Ning Xuema was shocked. The Almighty also knew how to talk about soy sauce. Needless to say, it was the phrase that she used to whisper in his ear, and the Almighty remembered it. In fact, their child was already old enough to talk about soy sauce. Unfortunately, she could not bring it over. Ning Xuema thought of little Nianma, and her heart was burning with anxiety. After all, little Nianma was still too young. Even if she explained some of the strategies to him, he would not understand and would not know how to act. After Luo Jiuchen locked her up in the prison, he would definitely secretly observe little Nianma's movements to determine whether Ning Xuema had a conspiracy. Therefore, Ning Xuema did not tell little Nianma about her plan to be locked up this time. When she went to the meeting, she only told the child to wait patiently in Mo Palace and that she might be a few days late. After she was locked up, based on Luo Jiuchen's personality, he would definitely secretly inform everyone in Mo Palace. Little Nianma might have already known about it, and she did not know how anxious he would be these few days. She thought that she would be able to get out tonight, but at such a critical time she traveled to another world. She did not know how the people who came to pick her up would react when they saw that she was dead. Could they bring her body out of the prison? If she did not wake up, the rest of the plan could not be carried out. Sigh, this was really not a good time to travel. She was regretting, and suddenly her waist was tightened. How can you be distracted at this time? Ning Xuema finally woke up. Suddenly she felt a chill between her eyebrows. Shinjuli pointed between her eyebrows with one of his fingers, and a white light appeared. It seemed like he was forming a kind of spell. "What are you doing?" Ning Xuema looked at him blankly. She could feel Shinjuli's power of telekinesis flowing in her body. "I am keeping you here." Shinjuli looked very serious. "You can't run away again." After all, Ning Xuema had learned spells from him, so she could recognize that it was a spell to calm the soul. Usually, when someone was frightened or had lost their soul and was summoned back, they would use this technique to calm their soul and calm their mind. Even the worst disciple under Shinjuli could use this kind of magic. After Ning Xuema learned it, she even used this kind of magic to summon the soul of a child. She did not expect Shinjuli to use it on her today. It was a low-level spell. Did he think that her departure was an ordinary loss of soul? Ning Xuema watched as he earnestly cast one requiem incantation after another on her body. It was simply an encyclopedia of requiem incantations. He probably used all the requiem incantations he knew on her body, just so she wouldn't leave. Ning Xuema felt both sour and warm in her heart. She silently calculated. There was still more than 2 hours before the agreed time with the reinforcements. She still had time. When she didn't possess a body and was only a soul, she really couldn't go back. But now that the possession was successful, if she wanted to leave, she just had to tell the Almighty that she came from the future 50,000 years in the future, and she could return with a whoosh. It was rare to be reunited with him. Ning Xuema couldn't help but hug him tightly. "Almighty." She even raised her head and kissed him on his smooth chin. Shinjuli was busy casting spells on her. Her kiss made his fingers tremble. "Be good." He muttered under his breath and cast another talisman. Ning Xuema knew that the spell couldn't be interrupted during the casting, or it would be easy to make the spell ineffective. Looking at his serious face, she suddenly had a mischievous idea. Not only was she not obedient, but she even reached out to touch his lips. "Almighty, your lips are so beautiful. They are so perfect that I want to kiss them again and again." Chapter 2002. Shinjuli's fingers froze again. Both of his hands were busy, so he couldn't stop her. But the arm around her waist tightened. "Be good, don't make trouble." He didn't want her to make trouble, but she wanted to. Ning Xuema narrowed her eyes and tiptoed to kiss his lips. Then she lowered her head to kiss his Adam's apple. She could clearly feel his heartbeat quickening and his breathing becoming heavier, pulling down an otherworldly deity from the altar and letting him have the 7 emotions and 6 desires that an ordinary man should have was actually a kind of subjugation. Right now, Ning Xuema felt the pleasure of conquering him. Most of the time he was the one who teased her. Now that she finally had the chance to tease him, she naturally wouldn't let it go. While he was busy, her little mouth was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water on his cheeks, nose, lips, Adam's apple and collarbone. She was having fun, so she didn't know when Shinjuli had stopped casting the curse. It wasn't until he suddenly pressed her upper body against his and bit her earlobe that she came back to her senses and blurted out, "Why are you so fast?" She thought that he would need at least 30 minutes to cast this series of curse techniques. "Is it fast?" he whispered in her ear. Then, "Let's take it slow." Before Ning Xuema could react, he had already taken off her belt and peeled off her clothes from her shoulders. God, she had shot herself in the foot. She quickly reached out to stop him. "Great God, we're still in the water." Shinjuli held her hand and looked at her sideways. He said word by word, "I want to taste your taste in the water." He said it leisurely, but his actions were incomparably strong. He didn't give Ning Xuema any room to resist. Ning Xuema still wanted to say something, but his lips blocked her mouth and gave her another breath of air. He was a little out of breath and said in a hoarse voice, "Be good, let me feel the real you, Ning Xuema." Under his strong and skillful attacks, she was soon powerless to resist. He finally felt the real her. Of course, she also felt that the real him was incomparably real. The moon in the sky was moving to the west. Ning Xuema lay weakly on the shore without any strength to struggle. Beneath her was a thick furry blanket, and on her body was a thin quilt. A breeze blew over and she sneezed. She raised her hand to rub her nose, wanting to cry but having no tears. Sure enough, a man couldn't be easily enlightened. Once there was a first time, the first thing he would think of when they met again would always be this. Her original intention was to tease him in the water, but she did not expect that he would happily roll her into the water. Sup. Her waist, her legs, and that inconvenient place were all sore and painful. What was even worse was that she had to pay a heavy price for saying the word quick. He had tormented her in the water for almost 6 hours. When she first entered the water, the sun was still high in the sky, but when she came out of the water, the moon was already in the west. She was so tired that she didn't even want to move a finger. She felt more tired than fighting. The worst thing was that Shinjuli didn't seem to have sobered up. After he carried her to the shore, he casually conjured a blanket to use as a bed and stuffed her into the quilt. Then he crawled into the quilt and pulled her into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and gently touched her eyes. "Be good, go to sleep." Chapter 2003. Sleeping outdoors? Although the time here was the same as the other world, the seasons were different. When Ning Xuema transmigrated here, it was late autumn there. But here it was early spring. It was easy to catch a cold sleeping by the lake. Although too much joy and too much passion made Ning Xuema's usually astute brain somewhat tied up, she still had this bit of common sense. She struggled in his arms. "Let's sleep in the house." Shinjuli was puzzled. "Aren't we in the house?" His gaze fell on the moon in the sky and he frowned slightly. "The luminous pearl is too bright." He waved his sleeves in the direction of the moon. After a while, the moon was still the same moon hanging there so brightly. Ning Xuema finally understood that the Almighty was still drunk and had not really woken up. It was probably the first time that the luminous pearl was so disobedient. Shinjuli waved his sleeves in the direction of the moon twice, and each time there was a white light. In the end, the moon hid behind the clouds and could not be seen anymore. She did not know if it was really frightened by the Almighty or if it felt that his actions were a little boring. Shinjuli was finally satisfied. He hugged her and said, "Good girl, let's sleep." Ning Xuema was speechless. "Almighty, how drunk are you? After so long, you are still so hot and cute." She was really tired, so tired that her brain could not function properly. Moreover, his embrace was so warm. She closed her eyes and vaguely thought that with a human furnace like him by her side, she would not catch a cold even if she slept by the lake for a night, right? So she snuggled into his arms again and fell asleep boldly, reassured. It was a dreamless night. When Ning Xuema woke up, the sky was already bright and the sun shone through the window. Ning Xuema was stunned for a moment under the blanket. She looked around and finally recognized that this was the waterside pavilion. The windows of the waterside pavilion were decorated with water plants, so Ning Xuema could recognize it at a glance. She raised her head and rubbed her temples. The crazy scenes from last night flashed through her mind. She remembered that she had fallen asleep by the lake. When did she move into the waterside pavilion? Also, what about Shinjuli? She lifted the blanket and got out of bed. She realized that she had already put on her clothes. Of course, it wasn't the usual one. Instead, it was a loose nightgown that was warm and comfortable. Needless to say, this was all thanks to Shinjuli. Ning Xuema stretched her arms and legs. Last night, when she fell asleep, she was clearly exhausted to the point of death. But now, it was as if she had been rejuvenated. Her whole body had an inexhaustible amount of energy. It seemed that he had massaged her again while she was asleep. What was even stranger was that she discovered that her skills seemed to have improved as well. Could it be that rolling around with the great god could increase one's power? Ning Xuema was still wondering when she suddenly smelled a strange fragrance of food, which made her stomach rumble. She rubbed her stomach. That's right, this little body hasn't eaten anything for a whole day. Plus, it's been an intense exercise. It would be strange if she wasn't hungry. Wait a minute. One day. Ning Xuema seemed to have thought of something and it was like she had been struck by lightning. Not good. One day had already passed. The people who were waiting for her in that world should have already arrived. God, what would happen if they saw her die in the prison? Perhaps that bastard Luo Jiuchen would be alerted. She had to go back immediately. She subconsciously wanted to find Shinjuli and tell him the truth before going back. Chapter 2004. She knew that this was unfair to Shinjuli, but the timing of this transmigration was not right. She had to wear it back. She followed the smell of food and soon saw Shinjuli behind the waterside pavilion. He was watching over a row of pots slowly cooking. Ning Xuema paused. Shinjuli heard the movement and turned around. "You're awake? Come and sit down." With a wave of his hand, there was a brocade stool beside him. Ning Xuema walked over, sat down and looked at the row of pots. There were frying pans, stir-frying pans, stewing pans, and even barbecuing pans. On the table next to him, there were a few blue and white porcelain plates. There were a few kinds of fish on the plates. Stir-fried fish, fried fish, grilled fish, stewed fish. There was really a variety of fish to eat. What was more rare was that these fish looked, smelled, and tasted good. It showed that he was serious about making fish. Shinjuli was obviously in a good mood. There was even a slight smile on his lips. His eyes reflected the lake water not far away. The Almighty rarely showed his emotions. It was even rarer to see him in a good mood like today. Ning Xuema naturally knew why he was happy. She felt an inexplicable bitterness in her heart. He was so happy because of her return. If he knew that she would go back soon, would he be disappointed? What was worse was that she didn't know when she would come back again after she left this time. Almighty. She coughed and prepared her opening speech. Are you hungry? You can eat whatever you want. Shinjuli conjured a pair of ivory chopsticks that looked like white jade and handed it to her. Ning Xuema paused. Why don't we wait until we finish eating the fish? We can't let the fruits of his labor go to waste. She took the chopsticks and looked at him. Let's eat together? Shinjuli was preparing the last fish. Looking at his knife skills on the fish, it seemed like he was going to make squirrel fish. You eat first. I'll accompany you later. He did not look back and continued to busy himself. Ning Xuema looked at him. It was obviously a very domestic action, but he did it smoothly. It did not seem like he was cooking, but like he was carving flowers in his free time. Her heart ached and she could not help but hug his arm. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'll wait for you. Shinjuli looked at her who was like a little bird and teased. I thought you would say you'll cook the last dish. Ning Xuema could not help but laugh. I'm not good at cooking. If you're not afraid that I'll spoil your fish, I'll cook this dish. You're in charge of eating, Shinjuli said decisively. He had already eaten her cooking a few times and at most, it was barely edible. She was now recovering. It was better to make more nutritious food so that she could eat more and recover faster. He was already very happy that she could wait for him. He waved his sleeves at the dishes that were already prepared. Each plate was covered with a transparent cover. This could not only keep the food warm, but also preserve the freshness of the food. Guru, what have you been researching in the study these days? Ning Xuema tried to find a topic. Researching a way to catch you. Shinjuli did not hide his purpose at all. You know I'm... Ning Xuema could not help but speak. However, before she could finish her sentence, Shinjuli put a finger on her lips and said, You don't have to say it. He cut her off. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. The guru knew that as long as she told the truth about where she came from, she would be transported back. Chapter 2005. Xuema, I don't care where you are from. I just want you to stay. Shinjuli was straightforward. Ning Xuema was speechless. This topic seemed to be a little heavy. She could not stay. Otherwise, what would happen to little Nianma? She seemed to see little Nianma's big teary eyes in front of her. Her heart ached. She did not want to continue this topic. She smiled and said, Master, how much did you drink last night? You were so drunk. The master looked so cute when he was drunk. He was a little dull and his reaction was half a beat slower. However, he still felt that he was sober and the things he did were amusing. If possible, she would like to make him drunk a few more times. Shinjuli's fingers froze. He pursed his lips and said, 10 jars. Was I drunk? Did she not know what he did after he was drunk? Of course you were drunk. You washed the fish and jumped into the lake. You even meditated at the bottom of the lake and made a bunch of whirlpools. Ning Xuema told him what he did last night. Of course, she did not mention that he had sex with her in the water. She focused on the embarrassing incident where he treated the moon as a luminous pearl and wanted to extinguish it. She laughed and talked beside him. Although he could not remember most of it, he felt that his face was a little hot when he heard her talk. Shinjuli was rarely shy. When Ning Xuema said these things, she thought that he would blush. Even if his face was not red, his ears should be red. Usually, people who were cold on the outside would have ears red when they were shy. However, Shinjuli was obviously not an ordinary person. He did not blush at all. Instead, he seemed to be listening with great interest. After listening to her, he asked, Is there more? Ning Xuema was speechless. Almighty, don't you know what it means to be shy? She suddenly remembered something. All right. Last night, you used more than a dozen requiem spells on me. I was almost glowing. Shinjuli looked at her sideways. How do you feel? How do you feel? After I used the requiem spell on you, did you feel any other discomfort? Shinjuli was finally done with the last plate of fish. He put the fish down and cast a cleansing spell to freshen himself up. This time he checked her pulse to see if it was effective. Ning Xuema shook her head. After being hit by the soul-pacifying incantation, before she could regain her senses, the great god had already pulled her onto the bed. However, she didn't seem to feel anything. Her movements were normal and she even felt light and healthy. Even her bones seemed to have lightened by a few pounds. Shinjuli felt her pulse and was quite satisfied. You're recovering well. You should be able to reach your previous level in 2 days. Alright, let's eat. The two of them sat facing each other as they ate. Ning Xuema thought that she would have to leave after finishing this meal. She was a little reluctant to part with him. Almighty, do you have any more wine? She wanted to drink a few cups with him. However, Shinjuli disagreed. Your current physique is not suitable for drinking alcohol. You can drink in a few days. I won't be here in a few days, Ning Xuema said in her heart. However, she couldn't say it out loud for the time being. She liked to eat grilled fish, so she reached out to take it. Shinjuli pushed a bowl of fish soup to her. Eat something soft first. It's not good for your health to eat grilled fish at the beginning. The Almighty was extraordinarily considerate. Ning Xuema felt warm and sour in her heart. If possible, she really didn't want to leave. However, sigh. After she arranged everything on the other side, she would definitely stay for a while when she transmigrated. Chapter 2006. It seemed that the Almighty had not gone out for more than half a month. How was the outside world? For some reason, Ning Xuema had a subconscious sense of avoidance towards the development of the outside world. She did not want to ask. She suddenly thought of Miao Fan. What did the Almighty do to Miao Fan? Did he rush back to the mortal world? It seemed that she did not disturb them these days. Almighty, your sister Miao Fan? She wanted to ask what happened to Miao Fan, but unexpectedly, the Almighty blocked her mouth with a piece of fish. Don't talk while eating. Well, it was a good tradition to not talk when sleeping or eating. She abided by it. Ning Xuema lowered her head and tried to eat all kinds of fish. The taste of these fish was different from ordinary fish. They were unusually fresh and smooth. She did not get tired of eating them. Shinjuli did not move his chopsticks much. Most of the time he looked at her eating. He seemed to be thinking about something. The Almighty's gaze seemed to have substance. Ning Xuema was a little scared by his gaze. She raised her hand and stuffed a piece of fish into his mouth. Are you hungry for this piece of fish in my hand? Aha, I'll give it to you. Her little hand was caught and then her whole body fell into his arms. His voice was cold and magnetic as if he was joking. What do you mean by this action? You're letting me eat you. Ning Xuema hurriedly struggled out of his arms and said sincerely, Almighty, you're thinking the wrong way. She was afraid that she would be caught and rolled in the sheets again, so she moved to the side. She and he were originally sitting on the edge of the waterside pavilion. Her movement was not a big deal, but she was caught off guard and suddenly lost her footing. With a cry of "Io," she fell into the water with a splash. She quickly paddled a few times and popped her head out of the water. A white light flashed in front of her eyes, and suddenly there was another person beside her. Shinjuli hugged her waist. His voice was slow, but the words he said were very annoying. You're addicted to the taste? Ning Xuema did not react at first. When she did, even her ears were hot. She had the urge to splash water on his face. Almighty, where's your cold image? She wanted to jump onto the shore, but Shinjuli wouldn't let her go. The two of them played around in the water for a while. During this time, Ning Xuema was taken advantage of several times. Only then did they both jump ashore. The weather in early spring was quite cold. Ning Xuema sneezed as soon as she came up. Shinjuli waved his sleeves to dry her hair and clothes. He held her waist and said, Let's go in. He meant to enter the waterside pavilion. Ning Xuema's gaze fell on the waterside pavilion and she felt uncomfortable. This was the place where she and Shinjuli used to sleep. 50,000 years later, it became Luo Jiuqin's territory and his bedroom. She looked at the richly ornamented rafters and painted rafters again. The layout outside was the same as it was 50,000 years later. She suddenly had an idea and hugged Shinjuli's arm. Great God, I don't like this waterside pavilion. Can you tear it down? Shinjuli raised his eyebrows. This waterside pavilion was actually built very stylishly. It was also one of his favorite places. How could she not like it? Shinjuli thought for a while and finally remembered the dazzling pearl-like nest of the demon Lord Xuema. She seemed to like the splendid architecture and layout. His Fantian Palace was in the cold style of ink painting. No wonder she didn't like it. What kind of waterside pavilion do you like? Shinjuli began to sketch a new layout in his mind. Ning Xuema looked at him. You want to renovate this place? I can renovate it to the style you like. Chapter 2007. I can change it to the style you like. Shinjuli touched her hair. He had to make her comfortable here so that she would be willing to stay for a long time. Ning Xuema was excited. Then I'll do it myself. She had recovered more than half of her power, so it was easy for her to make a building from the ground. She silently operated her magic and stretched her fingers a few times. 4 or 5 red lights flew toward the waterside pavilion. She wanted to tear it down first and make a water curtain cave here. She wanted to see if Luo Jiuqian still dared to live here 50,000 years later. If he dared to live here, she would pour water on him. The red light she emitted was very powerful. Not to mention such a small waterside pavilion, even a tall building with several floors would be shattered into pieces. After a while, Ning Xuema looked at the waterside pavilion that was still standing there and was a little stunned. Guru, what is this waterside pavilion made of? Why is it so sturdy? Shinjuli couldn't help but want to laugh. Stupid, this is where the gods live. If you want to change the building here, only I can do it. So that's it. Ning Xuema thought for a while and suddenly thought of a problem. Now that Luo Jiuqian was the master of Fantian Palace, would that bastard tear down the whole Fantian Palace and rebuild it? The more she thought about it, the more frustrated she felt. Guru, if there is a new master here, will the new master rebuild this place? Shinjuli's eyes deepened. He thought of her real identity, which should be from 50,000 years later. Then he thought of the first time she came here. She hugged his waist tightly as if they were reuniting after death. His heart skipped a beat. Shinjuli's reasoning ability was not ordinary. Based on a few words, he could guess the general result. He was a born god. When he had no worries, he didn't care about life and death. Whether it was life or death, he let nature take its course. But now he had someone he cared about. He wanted to be together with her forever, not just for 50,000 years. In this world, there was only one person who could replace him, Luo Jiuqian. But a subgod was a subgod. It was not easy to replace the main god. Several conditions had to be met. Firstly, the sovereign had truly ascended. Secondly, the demigod needed to gain the trust of the people of the 6 realms. These 2 conditions were not easy to achieve, especially the last one, which was even more difficult. No matter how capable a person was, he might be able to control the people of the 6 realms through force and means, but he might not be able to gain their trust. Furthermore, it wasn't something that could be accomplished in a short period of time. Even 100 or 80 years might not be enough. As for Luo Jiuqian, with his temperament, how could it be easy for him to gain the trust of the people of the 6 realms? Even if he spent his entire life, he might not be able to do it. Of course, only the heavenly axiom and the true core gods knew about these conditions to replace the core gods. Even Luo Jiuqian wouldn't know until he became a true overgod, no matter how much he coveted the position of overgod. Fantian Palace only recognized the Lord God. Once there was a new Lord God, it would automatically change its layout according to the aesthetic style of the Lord God. He thought for a moment and asked casually, Xuema, have you seen what Fantian Palace looks like after it was rebuilt? Ning Xuema shook her head. No, I feel that Fantian Palace has been the same for tens of thousands of years. When she left Fantian Palace, it was still the same. However, after she left, she wasn't sure if the layout of the buildings inside had changed or not. Anyway, according to the reports of the spies, there was no movement outside Fantian Palace. Chapter 2008. However, she wasn't sure if the layout of the building had changed after she left. Anyway, according to the report from the spies, there was no movement outside the Fantian Palace. Judging from the appearance, the Fantian Palace was still the Fantian Palace. Guru, I want to transform this place into the water curtain cave. Ning Xuema began to design the blueprint. She also knew how to draw. Although she didn't draw as well as Shinjuli's, the things she drew were still very realistic. Shinjuli watched as Gu Shijio took out a ruler and a pair of compasses. She had all kinds of modern drawing tools. He did not say anything, but he hugged her waist even tighter. After a while, Ning Xuema drew a standard building blueprint. Shinjuli picked it up and looked at it, then looked at her again. I didn't know you had such a deep mind. Ning Xuema was proud. When she was an agent, one of the skills she learned was to draw various architectural renderings. Of course, it wasn't to design buildings but to make it easier to steal things from buildings. Shinjuli looked at it for a while. Why do I feel that this special waterside pavilion of yours is not a place for people to live in, but a place with mechanisms? The guru was really smart. Well, she almost forgot that the guru was also a master of mechanisms. She immediately said, yes, I want to design this place as a special place with mechanisms. It will make the people living here suffer. Shinjuli seemed to realize something and smiled. There are a few mechanisms here that are still too simple. Do you want me to help you improve it? Yes. So, Shinjuli really helped her improve it. When Shinjuli finished the last stroke, Ning Xuema stared at the blueprint and became more and more happy. How was this a waterside pavilion? It was simply a mechanism array. Guru, let's modify it according to this blueprint. Ning Xuema made the final decision. Shinjuli smiled. Look back again. Ning Xuema subconsciously turned around and was stunned. She didn't know when, but the waterside pavilion had disappeared, and the mechanical building that she had drawn on the blueprint had risen from the ground. There was not the slightest difference. Ning Xuema's eyes sparkled. God was indeed a god. He could build such a complex building in such a short time. She saw a new building here. Which one did that bastard Luo Jiuchen see? The moon was high in the sky and Luo Jiuchen was tossing and turning in his room. That girl would give in, right? What kind of answer would she give him in 2 days? He didn't know why, but he felt uneasy tonight and couldn't fall asleep in the middle of the night. He closed his eyes. He couldn't be so impatient. Now that the initiative was in his hands, he wasn't afraid that the girl would come up with any new tricks. He did not fall asleep until dawn. He had too many things to deal with these days, so he was especially tired and slept very soundly. He didn't dream at first, but later he dreamed that he was walking in a heavy rain, and he couldn't avoid the rain even with his spells. He was drenched like a drowned rat. After a while he felt as if he was immersed in cold water and he was shivering from the cold. He shuddered and suddenly opened his eyes. Then he got a shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. Before he fell asleep he was lying on a soft bed, but now the soft bed was suddenly gone and replaced by an ice pool. The ice in the ice pool rippled and cold air came out. What was even worse was that water that came out of nowhere was splashing down on his head. Chapter 2009. What was going on? He suddenly jumped out of the pool, drenched. But he didn't know what he stepped on, but with a cracking sound, a row of sharp arrows came out of nowhere and shot towards him. Luo Jiuchen frowned. He was a sub-god and had extraordinary skills. Naturally he was not afraid of these small arrows. With a wave of his sleeve, a purple light was emitted and shrouded his body. Those sharp arrows hit his purple light barrier. Chi. With several sounds, several sharp arrows actually pierced through his protective light screen and directly shot into his body. Luo Jiuchen opened his eyes in shock. In this world, other than Shinjuli who had already immortalized, no one could penetrate his light barrier. How did these seemingly ordinary arrows do it? When the arrows hit his body, the tips of the arrows drilled into his flesh and blood spurted out. Even if he was a sub-god he still knew pain. He could not help but groan. When the arrows entered his body, it was as if they had not pierced his body but his soul. The arrows were still shooting wildly. This time he did not dare to use his light barrier to block them. Instead he pulled out his sword and formed a sword barrier around him. The arrows were like a torrential rain as they landed on his sword banner, clanging incessantly. The force of the arrows was so strong that his wrist was numb. The sword in his hand was almost knocked out of his hand. When the rain of arrows finally passed, his palm was already broken and his entire arm was numb. He stood in place and his expression changed greatly. He was no stranger to this kind of arrow rain. 50,000 years ago when he fought with that person he had a taste of it. His gaze fell on the arrow that he had not pulled out in time. He gritted his teeth and pulled it out. The moment he saw the arrow, his fingers trembled. The arrow looked simple but was extremely sharp. The arrow was flowing with psychokinesis and it buzzed in his palm. Luo Jiuchen threw the arrow away as if he had been stung by a scorpion. This arrow was Shinjuli's. The psychokinesis flowing on it was also Shinjuli's. Luo Jiuchen's face was pale. He could not help but look around. Only then did he realize that the entire layout of the place he was sleeping in had changed. It had become completely unfamiliar. There was a creaking sound coming from the ceiling and walls, as if some mechanism was being activated. This scene was too strange and he didn't have time to think about it. Subconsciously he felt that he couldn't stay in this room any longer. He leaped up and rushed toward the door. As he moved he didn't know what mechanism was triggered, but a large net fell from above his head. 2 hours later. Luo Jiuchen stood there in a daze. He didn't even know if he had made it out of that strange room. He only knew that after dodging round after round of attacks from the heavenly net, round after round of cold arrows, fire arrows, sharp knives and heavenly fire, he finally jumped out of a window, Unexpectedly he jumped into the clouds. Everywhere was a vast expanse of clouds, and from time to time, a string of lightning flashed across the sky. He could not see any place that seemed like a way out. His fingers were clenched tightly, but cold sweat seeped out of his palms. It was as if he had fallen into a trap. And he was no stranger to this trap. Many years ago, Shinjuli had used this trap to trap him. He had been in the trap for a long time but had not been able to break out. Of course, he had broken through this trap once before. After studying it, it was not too difficult to break through it again. What made him break out in cold sweat was not the trap, but the person who set it up. Could it be that Shinjuli was not dead? He was back again. Back to take back his things? Chapter 2010. Could it be that Shinjuli didn't die? He came back. Did he come back to take back his things? How could it be possible? If he didn't die, he couldn't have gotten the Bell of Heaven way. Besides, it was impossible for him to not die when he sealed Zisha. What was going on? Luo Jiuchen was thinking as he rushed left and right in the matrix. But soon he couldn't think anymore because he found that the matrix looked the same as before, but several key points inside had changed. For example, the original gate of life had become the gate of death. There were countless traps and traps in the matrix. Luo Jiuchen was so powerful, but he still found it difficult to move. He was even injured several times, and his purple clothes were stained with blood. He was full of anxiety and confusion, and the voice-transmitting spell on his waist suddenly lit up again. The light was light red, which meant that the other party was a spy he arranged in the prison. Did Shuama finally think it through and want to see me? Luo Jiuchen didn't know whether he was happy or nervous, so he quickly opened the voice-transmitting spell. After a while he was disappointed. The voice-transmitting spell was full of busy tones, and he couldn't hear anyone talking at all. Obviously, the matrix he was in now blocked the signal of the voice-transmitting spell. As long as he couldn't break out of the matrix, he couldn't really get through the voice-transmitting spell to know what was going on over there. Luo Jiuchen was flustered and anxious, but he couldn't do anything in a short time. Ning Xuema squatted there and watched Shinjuli draw. He seemed to be addicted to drawing, and he modified and added from time to time. Ning Xuema had already seen that he was setting up a very complicated matrix, and the crisscrossed lines would make people dizzy if they didn't know how to draw. Guru, has anyone ever broken through your matrix? Will it be easier to break through next time? Ning Xuema asked. Shinjuli's pen paused and he put her on his lap. Do you have any better ideas? Ning Xuema tilted her head and studied the matrix for a long time. Your matrix is a bit complicated and I can't understand it at the moment. But if someone breaks through it, it's better to make some improvements and change the gate of life and death. Shinjuli's eyes flashed. That's a good idea. As he drew, he explained the array to Ning Xuema. After explaining, he handed the pen to her. Come, make the changes. Ning Xuema could see that the layout of the waterside pavilion was changed by Shinjuli's brush. This stroke of his was simply a divine brush. No, it was his hands that had this magical ability. It had nothing to do with this pen because she had casually conjured this pen. Shinjuli had even praised her for the uniqueness of this pen. If she were to modify it, would she also have this function? Ning Xuema was also an expert in mechanical techniques, and her mechanical techniques were even mixed with some modern technology. She looked at the map and studied it for a long time. She pointed at a few places with her finger. I think we can modify these places. Normally, when people break through this matrix and fall into this matrix, they will have a kind of habitual thinking and will still follow the original path out. Why don't we do the opposite? What she said was clear and logical, and it was true that she had pushed through the old to bring out new ideas. There were some places that even Shinjuli did not expect, but once she said it, he felt enlightened. He looked at her in his arms and she always surprised him. Guru, if I start writing, can I immediately change the real layout of the matrix? Shinjuli held her little hand. Come, this will do. Chapter 2011. His big palms were warm, and when he held her hand, she felt a warm current flowing from the back of her hand to her heart. She was really greedy for his embrace and she really couldn't bear to leave him. Ning Xuema snuggled in his arms, and the two of them discussed and changed some places from time to time. Unknowingly, the array in the waterside pavilion had combined the wisdom of the two of them, and it could be said to be perfect. When Ning Xuema finished drawing the last stroke, she let out a sigh of relief. She looked at the drawing with satisfaction. Great deity, tell me, if someone who doesn't understand formations mistakenly enters this place, will it directly take their life? Shinjuli said, even if it doesn't kill him, it can trap him for a few days and make him lose a layer of skin. Ning Xuema's eyes sparkled. Is it possible to kill him directly? That would save her a lot of trouble. When she went back, she would find a way to lure that bastard Luo Jiuchen there. Shinjuli shook his head. After all, the array is dead. Yes, if it could trap Luo Jiuchen to death with an array, then he wouldn't be a subgod anymore. He would be called a defective product. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. By the way, Guru, that Luo Jiuchen is too despicable. I'm afraid that he will plot against us in the future. If you're not here, can you teach me how to deal with him? Shinjuli thought for a moment. He's a subgod. Logically speaking, if he doesn't do something evil, he can't be completely sealed. Completely sealed? Can't he be completely killed? Ning Xuemo raised her eyebrows. Even gods could be immortalized. How could a god not die this time? Shinjuli said lightly, the heavens make him inferior to the gods in everything, so he has to be given a special skill. Ning Xuemo. Damn, that bastard Luo Jiuchen's special skill is immortality? This was too much of a pain in the ass. Then what about completely sealing him? Ning Xuemo settled for the next best thing. Severely injure him, seal him in a place and use a divine curse as a medium. As long as the god does not die, he will never be able to come out. However, the problem was that the Almighty was already dead in that world and he was even immortalized. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get him back. It would be great if the great god also had an immortal body. Perhaps even if he was immortalized, he could be reborn in a very short period of time. Thinking of this, Ning Xuemo suddenly had an idea. That year, little Xuema's curse technique was so effective. Then, could it be that her curse also had the same effect? Great God, can you use God's curse as you wish? Shinjuli could not help but laugh. How could it be that easy? The god's curse can only be cast under certain conditions, and the god will have to pay a great price to cast this curse. So that's how it is. It seems that if I want to use this demonic curse, I have to pay a huge price. Perhaps I'll have to pay with my life. Great God, you've dealt with Luo Jiuchen so many times. What's his weakness? Shinjuli shook his head slightly. I've only fought with him a few times. He's weak when it comes to arrays and his martial arts are slightly worse than mine. However, he's immune to poison. Immune to poison? What about poison of heavenly water? Ning Xuema's heart sank as she blurted out. Don't tell me that the poison of heavenly water is useless. Because of it, I've been imprisoned once. Shinjuli raised his eyebrows. What poison of heavenly water? The great god doesn't know? Is it true that the poison of heavenly water is that bastard's nemesis? Ning Xuema's heart was beating like a drum. She made up her mind and said, I heard that the poison of heavenly water is Luo Jiuchen's nemesis. Great God, you seem to have refined and collected a bunch of herbs. Chapter 2012. Shinjuli looked at her and after a moment, he carried her and stood up. Let's go to my medicine refinement room. Shinjuli was in a daze as he looked at the 49 herbs that Ning Xuema had written down from memory. Ning Xuema was also in a daze as she looked at him. These herbs? Shinjuli paused for a moment. I've never heard of more than half of them in this continent. Where did you get this prescription from? Mother Earth said. Shinjuli frowned. Even though this person is a little heartless, her words are always true. Ning Xuema let out a slight sigh of relief. As long as it's true, it's fine. Great God, you said you've never heard of more than half of the herbs here. Is it because the places where these herbs grow are more remote and not known by people? Shinjuli shook his head slightly. That's not the case. As long as these herbs grow on this continent, it's impossible for me not to know. How about this, I'll make a trip to Mother Earth in the next 2 days and ask where these herbs grow. That was the only way out of the situation. However, Ning Xuema's heart stirred. Maybe some of the herbs here weren't from this continent. Otherwise, with the great god's ability, it was impossible for him to not be able to gather them. 50,000 years later, the great god's special medicine refinement room had gathered 46 herbs. Maybe 20 of them were gathered by Shinjuli after he reincarnated in Heaven Bestow continent and had always been in his storage space. After he recovered his memories from 50,000 years ago, he put those herbs together. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. She raised her head to look at the sky. It was time for her to go back. She coughed and steeled her heart. Great God, actually I'm not from this era, I'm from... A finger suddenly sealed her little mouth and Shinjuli stopped her from continuing. You don't have to say, I know everything. Ning Xuema was stunned. He already knew. But she had no choice but to say it. If she didn't say it, she wouldn't be able to wear it back. She grabbed Shinjuli's fingers and was about to speak again when Shinjuli interrupted her. Xuema, do you want to be with me forever? Of course. Everything she did was for the sake of being with him forever. Ning Xuema nodded. Yes. Shinjuli's lips curled into a smile as he ruffled her hair. That's it. Xuema, don't leave. Stay by my side. Ning Xuema was speechless. Why did she feel that Shinjuli seemed to be implying something? Forget it, I don't care. She had to leave. Goddess, in fact, I really want to stay by your side, but we still have Nianma. He is still so young. According to his age, he is not even 6 months old. Ning Xuema suddenly paused. Strange. She had said so many things about the future, but why did she still have no intention of leaving this body? Shinjuli looked at her with his arms crossed. Nianma is our son. Less than 6 months old? Yes. Yes. Shinjuli slowly said, Xuema, you and I are now together. Your body will be fully recovered after 8 to 10 days of rest. As for the reason why you are not growing up, I have already found out. I am preparing the prescription now, and I believe that I can cure you within a year. Logically speaking, after you and I are married, it is impossible for us to wait for 50,000 years to have a child. This is unreasonable. Ning Xuema was speechless. It was indeed unreasonable. If she did not travel through time, she would not believe it either. However, Xuema, since you are from the future, you must know what happened in the past 50,000 years. Why don't you explain it to me? Chapter 2013. Ning Xuema felt that the situation was a bit strange. In the past, as long as she mentioned the things that happened 50,000 years later, she would travel back in time. Now, after discussing with the Almighty for so long, she did not have any intention to leave. She was still sitting there. Where did the accident happen? As for the things that happened in the past 50,000 years, could she tell the Almighty in advance? If the Almighty knew about the problem of Zisha in advance, he would definitely take precautions to prevent it from happening. In that case, history would be completely changed. Her little Nianma might really disappear. No, history had actually changed. At least, little Xuema did not become a demon. The one who suffered the inhuman torture was just a substitute. The substitute could not become a demon because of the resentment, right? Perhaps Zisha would not happen again? No, she still had the memories of Ning Xuema and Xueyemo. It proved that the history of Zisha had not changed. Little Xuema would still be reincarnated. Could it be that the substitute was really that capable? Ning Xuema was a little confused at this moment. She sat there in a daze. Shinjuli hugged her in his arms. Xuema, are you afraid that if you say it, history will be completely changed and little Nianma will really disappear? The Almighty was indeed very careful. He actually guessed her concerns so quickly. She shook her head. Not only Nianma will disappear, but many things will disappear. Xuema, it's okay if you don't want to say it. Don't worry. Since little Nianma will be born 50,000 years later, we can have a child 50,000 years later. Ning Xuema shook her head. How could things be so simple? She blurted out, if we continue like this, little Nianma may not be the same little Nianma after 50,000 years. She had already learned that the world she was in now and the world 50,000 years later were parallel. It was like a 3-dimensional space and a 5-dimensional space. Although it was unbelievable, it was true. If she had been living here for 50,000 years, the child she had would definitely not be the same little Nianma. Or perhaps, after she transmigrated and changed history, the original world would collapse and disappear completely. Perhaps she would also slowly disappear. After all, she had reincarnated twice before coming here. History had completely changed and there would no longer be a special agent Ning Xuema in this world. Too many thoughts were entangled in her mind. She was momentarily confused and couldn't sort them out. Strange. She had already revealed so many secrets about the future world. Why didn't she have any intention of transmigrating back? Perhaps it was because Shinjuli had already guessed the contents, so it wasn't considered divulging heaven's secrets? Then she should say something more explosive. She took a deep breath and said, Great God, 50,000 years later, you will die and never come back. I will search the heavens and the earth, but I won't be able to find a way to revive you. She paused. She had already revealed so much. Why didn't she have any intention of wearing it back? She suddenly remembered the Requiem spell that Shinjuli cast on her last night. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be the effect of those Requiem spells? Great God, what did you cast on me? Those requiem spells. Ning Shuima suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. Shinjuli had been looking at her the whole time. One of his arms was wrapped around her waist. When he heard her question, he seemed to be suffocating. He lowered his eyes slightly and said, Shuima, those soul-pacifying incantations are not soul-pacifying incantations, but soul-locking incantations. Chapter 2014. Ning Shuima looked at him with her eyes wide open, waiting for him to continue. Shinjuli closed his eyes and said, You came and went so suddenly that I tried my best to make you stay. That's why I came up with this idea so that I could lock you up whenever you came back. It seems like I've succeeded. Ning Shuima was speechless. Her breath was stuck in her chest and she couldn't breathe. She could not go back? She could not go back? She could not go back. What about Nianma? He had lost his father and now he had lost his mother. How would he cry? Would Luo Jiuchen bully him? Ning Shuima's head was buzzing. She was really confused and at the same time she was angry. She suddenly looked up and pushed Shinjuli's arm away. She took a few steps back. Why did you use this method on me? Why didn't you tell me in advance? Did you consider my feelings when you acted on your own? She asked a series of questions like a machine gun. The more she asked, the angrier she became. He had always been like this. He did not respect her opinion at all. He did not even discuss it with her in advance. Shinjuli's face was slightly pale. He saw her anger and his heart felt like it was being cut by something. She kept saying that she loved him and got along well with him, but she did not want to stay with him for a long time. Did she want to go back to the world without him? He took a deep breath. Shuima, I thought you were very willing to stay. What if I stay with Nianma? Luo Jiuchen, that bastard, will kill him. Shuima, if you stay here, perhaps history will change. If history changes, Nianma will be born and grow up under our protection. No one can bully him. Don't worry, I will change everything. I will not let you experience the pain of losing your husband 50,000 years later. By then, we can still be reunited as a family. It was not like this. By then, Nianma might not be the same Nianma as before. If she and Shinjuli lived a smooth life for 50,000 years, there would be no Shuiemo and Ning Shuiemo. Her memories of the two lives would disappear. Would she still be the same person? Her mind was in a mess. She couldn't help but get angry at Shinjuli. That's different. I want the old little Nianma, not his replacement. Then you would rather stay in a future without me than a present where you can be with me? Shinjuli's voice was still very calm, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Ning Shuima was stunned by his question. She took a deep breath and said, I'm already thinking of ways to make you return. She thought of Xiaohe, who grew up in Mo Palace. The person you like is the me 50,000 years later and not the me now? Shinjuli asked again. His questions were getting sharper and sharper. Ning Shuima was speechless. The great god was still the great god. His personality and appearance were the same. He did not even reincarnate. Regardless of whether history had changed or not, he would still live until 50,000 years later. The only difference was that the great god now did not have the memories of 50,000 years later. He did not know that he used to be called Han Shangyue. He did not know that he used to be the god of the Tianxi continent. He did not know that he had disciples and he did not remember the past with her. Ning Shuima closed her eyes slightly. Yes, she was happy with him now, but, however, she always felt that she had lost a lot of the most important things in her life. Her life would become incomplete. Chapter 2015. She took a deep breath and suppressed the confusion in her heart. She said bitterly, You've always been you, whether it's now or 50,000 years later. But since you love me, you shouldn't make such a big decision on your own. At least, you should ask for my permission first. Shinjuli paused. Shuima, I wanted to discuss it with you after you came back, but I was drunk last night. When he was drunk and she came back, his first thought was to make her stay in his ecstasy. He didn't think too much about it, so he immediately cast the soul-locking spell on her the moment he recognized her. He was so drunk last night that his actions were a little messy. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't even remember some things clearly. After he sobered up, he still remembered that he cast the soul-locking spell on her. He felt a little uneasy. He knew that she might be angry, but he didn't expect her to have such a big reaction. This made him a little uncomfortable. Was she so unwilling to stay with him? Ning Shuima seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly looked up. Almighty, since you can cast this spell, you should be able to break it, right? Then you can break it for me. Shinjuli didn't look too good. He turned around and walked away. There's no break. Ning Xuema was speechless. She chased after him. You can't be so selfish, a figure flashed in front of her. Shinjuli grabbed her wrist and said in a deep voice, Xuema, is it selfish for me to try to keep you? What are you? Ning Xuema took a deep breath and said, I can come back again, but this time I have to. But this time I have to go back. She hugged Shinjuli's arm. Almighty, can you help me undo it? Her eyes were full of eagerness and desire, but in Shinjuli's eyes, it was a little dazzling. His arm was stiff. There's really no break. Ning Xuema's heart sank. She was so angry that she blurted out, if I knew you were so selfish, I wouldn't have come this time. Shinjuli, his expression changed and he took a step back. He looked at her for a moment, and there seemed to be waves in his eyes. After Ning Xuema said those words, she somewhat regretted it. However, the words had already left her mouth and she couldn't take them back. Besides, she was also angry. He looked at her and she looked back at him, unwilling to admit defeat. After a long while, Shinjuli finally said slowly, I will find a way to send you back. Ning Xuema heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. He was a god. If he wanted to think of a way, he should be able to figure it out, right? A smile finally appeared on her face as she subconsciously said, thank you. As soon as she said that, she realized that something was wrong. With their current relationship, saying those two words was obviously too polite and distant. Sure enough, Shinjuli's expression became even worse. He faintly said, you don't have to be so polite with me. Then he turned around and left. He walked too hurriedly and tripped on the door sill. He staggered slightly, but then he stood firm and strode away. Ning Xuema looked at his back as he left. She didn't know why, but she actually felt a sense of desolation from him. Her heart seemed to be pierced by something and there was a slight pain in it. She knew that her words must have hurt him, but she also had her own difficulties. She would make it up to him in the future. Besides, he was the one at fault first. She shook her head and suppressed the strange feelings in her heart. She decided to just stay in his medicine refining room and practice her medicine refining skills. Unknowingly, a day passed. Chapter 2016. Ning Xuema was so engrossed in her alchemy that she forgot to eat and sleep. She even forgot to eat. When she woke up again, it was already dark outside. A few stars were scattered in the sky as if she could reach out and pick them up. Perhaps it was because of the sumptuous fish feast. Ning Xuema didn't feel hungry even after a busy day in the alchemy room. When she came out, she remembered that Shinjuli hadn't come back since he left. Was he angry? In a fit of pique? Alchemy was not an easy job, especially high-level alchemy. She was so tired that her waist and back were aching. She stretched her arms, stretched her muscles and bones, and then walked to Shinjuli's study. If there was no accident, he should be in the study studying the way to break the soul-locking spell. She wanted to see how his study was going. Thinking of this, she walked to the door of the study and unexpectedly found that the door was closed. It was dark inside and there was no trace of anyone. So he wasn't in the study, then where did he go? Ning Xuema frowned slightly. She thought for a while and ran to the solitary peak. She had recovered most of her power now, so she flew to the solitary peak easily. There was no one on the solitary peak, and Shinjuli wasn't there either. Only the heavenly lost stone stood tall on the mountain peak, glowing faintly. Ning Xuema stood in front of the heavenly stone and looked at it with a complicated feeling. Heavenly Tao, what was the heavenly Tao? But it could make people like Shinjuli protect it. Was it fair? If it was fair, how could it let people like Luo Juchen be the sub-god? Why did it let her suffer so much? Even a relationship could be so successful, hovering between life and death. She was already angry, and now that she saw this stone, the fire in her heart burned even more. Heavenly Tao. What is the heavenly Tao? What are you? Can you control the life and death of the 6 realms? Ning Xuema looked at the heavenly law stone and reprimanded it. On the heavenly law stone, there were countless characters that she couldn't understand. They were intertwined with each other and were spinning rapidly. If she looked at it for a little longer, Ning Xuema would even feel a little dizzy. Hey, since you can get the great god to protect you, you should be stronger than him, right? Then can you undo the soul-locking curse he placed on me? No way, right? If you can't even do something like this, how can you call yourself the heavenly Tao? Don't tell me you're an extraterrestrial meteorite? The heavenly Tao is actually illusory, right? Perhaps you are very abstract, just like what we call heaven's will. Today we know that heaven's will is heartless and it's probably similar to you. Ning Xuema decided to sit in front of the heavenly Tao stone. She was in the mood for a long talk. If you really have spirituality, then show it in front of me, or take back that bastard Luo Jiuchen, and I'll believe that you're the heavenly Tao. Or you can just send me back to 50,000 years in the future and I'll believe you too. Hey, say something. You can show me a few words too. Don't tell me you're just a stone that makes people dizzy. Other than that, don't you have any other functions? The heavenly Tao stone didn't seem to care about her. It just flashed as it should and there was no change at all. Ning Xuema sighed and rubbed her eyebrows. Why was she venting her anger on a broken stone? Perhaps the heavenly Tao stone was just a kind of belief, and it didn't really have any miracles. She was about to stand up when a sentence suddenly appeared in her mind. Don't reveal the secrets of heaven. If you reveal them, it will change, and change will bring disaster. Chapter 2017. These words seemed to automatically echo in her mind, causing Ning Xuema's entire body to stiffen. She abruptly turned her head to look at the heavenly Tao stone. The heavenly Tao stone was still the same. Were those words a warning from the heavenly Tao stone? Did it show its power? Hey, you're quite intelligent. I don't want to reveal the secrets of the heavens. If you don't want me to reveal them, you can send me back. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to control my mouth. Ning Xuema took the opportunity to bargain with the heavenly Tao stone. Suddenly, a sparkling and translucent white light flashed from the heavenly Law stone, directly enveloping Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema's heart was filled with joy. Was this white light going to send her back? She didn't dodge. Just as her body was about to be enveloped by the white light, a hurricane suddenly rushed out and pushed Ning Xuema back a few steps. That white light missed its target and brushed past the corner of Ning Xuema's clothes. Ning Xuema was stunned. She was not satisfied and wanted to rush over again. However, a white shadow flashed in front of her eyes. Then her waist was tightened and she was lifted up into the air. After the white light from the heavenly Law stone missed its target, it unexpectedly turned around and chased after Ning Xuema. The white light looked ordinary, but it was extremely fast. When one looked at it carefully, it could even change into 7 colors. Ning Xuema knew who saved her the moment she was in the man's arms. Her body stiffened and she struggled. Hey, let go of me. I want to go back. It took her a lot of effort to make the heavenly Tao stone shoot out such a beautiful white light. This might be the way for her to travel back quickly. She was not willing to give up just like that. The man who hugged her was naturally Shinjioli. He held Ning Xuema's waist tightly and didn't say anything. That white light chased after them too quickly. He didn't have time to say anything as he carried her and dodged in a zigzag pattern. His movements were as fast as lightning. The white light chased after them, refusing to let go. It seemed that if it didn't send Ning Xuema back, it wouldn't give up. Shinjioli was so fast that it almost caught up with him a few times. It looked very dangerous. The white light suddenly spread out in a fan shape and covered the entire mountain in the blink of an eye. It was heading toward the 2 people who were flying around the mountain peak. Shinjioli's expression changed. He suddenly stopped. Kill me first if you want to kill her. He hugged Ning Xuema and used his back to block the white light. Swoosh! With a loud bang, the white light hit Shinjioli's back. Shinjioli's body trembled and he stumbled forward. Ning Xuema was in his arms. Although she didn't come into direct contact with the white light, when the white light hit Shinjioli, she also felt as if she was hit by a strong current. She couldn't help but groan and almost vomit blood. The white light finally dissipated and the mountain peak returned to its usual calmness. Shinjioli didn't stop for a moment. The moment the white light dissipated, he flew down the mountain peak with Ning Xuema in his arms. As soon as he landed, he threw Ning Xuema to the ground and shouted angrily, "Do you want to die?" Ning Xuema jumped up from the ground. Looking at his pale face, she was very unconvinced. "I just want to go back. That white light might be sending me back. Dream on. That white light is going to kill you. Once the white light touches you, your body and your soul will immediately break into millions of pieces and dissipate in the air." Ning Xuema was speechless. She also knew that she was a little rash because she was too anxious to go back. Chapter 2018. She also knew that she was a little rash because she was too anxious to go back. However, what he said about being swept by the white light should be wrong, right? Didn't the white light hit him? Other than his face being a little pale, he didn't seem to be injured. Shinjioli seemed to understand her doubts and sneered, I'm a god, the guardian of the heavenly axiom. Naturally, it won't take my life. But you're a demon. He suddenly stopped talking. What's wrong with me being a demon? Ning Xuema felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words. Shinjuli closed his eyes slightly. Nothing? Forget it. It's my fault, I'll pay for it. Give me some time, I'll find a way to break the soul-locking curse on you. He didn't look at her anymore and turned to leave. His steps were a little staggered. He was hit by the white light of the heavenly axiom. Was he really injured? Ning Xuema's heart tightened. She couldn't help but take 2 steps forward and ask dryly, Are you injured? Shinjuli's footsteps paused slightly, but he didn't turn back and left directly. He walked very quickly and disappeared in an instant. It was as if he disappeared into thin air. Ning Xuema chased after him for a few steps, but she couldn't catch up. She stood in the same place for a moment. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. She sensed her body. She felt like she was hit by a strong electric current. Although her body was painful and numb, she didn't feel any other discomfort after that. That white light was actually more like a high-voltage electric current. Although she was in his arms and wasn't hit by the white light, according to the principle of conduction, she and Shinjuli should have been injured to the same extent. Since she was fine, he should be fine too. Moreover, he was the guardian of the heavenly axiom. The heavenly axiom naturally had to give him some face and wouldn't really hurt him. Just now he left very quickly. It was as if he disappeared in the blink of an eye. His kung fu was so high, so even if he was injured, it shouldn't be serious. He left alone probably because he saw her trying to think of a way to go back and was hurt. Ning Xuema simply sat down on a rock by the roadside to organize her thoughts. She was too impatient when she realized that she was locked in here by the soul lock spell. She said a few hurtful words to the Almighty and probably hurt him. I'll have a good talk with him when I go back. She wanted him to understand that she had her reasons for insisting on leaving. It wasn't because she didn't love him. She had been in love with him for 3 lifetimes, how could she not love him? Everything she had done was for his sake. It was all for the reunion of the family of 3. She would go back and make some arrangements. When she transmigrated again, she would stay here for a while and accompany him. The Almighty only had the memory of this life and not the memories of the previous 2 lives. It was normal that he did not know about little Nianma. It was also normal that he did not care about little Nianma. Who would really care about a future child whom they had never met before and risk everything for the sake of this child? However, Gu Shizhou could not do that. She had little Nianma's existence in her memory. She had the memory of 2 lifetimes. It was undeniable that she loved the Almighty who had the memory of 2 lifetimes. She also loved and liked the current Almighty. However, she hoped that he could really return after 50,000 years and have the complete memory of 3 lifetimes. However, how should she explain it to him? Humans had a tendency to be lazy just like Shinjuli now. He accepted the current world and hoped that the present world would be stable. Chapter 2019. If she told him that little Xuema would die in order to seal the purple evil spirit, and that he would have to go to the Tianxi continent to experience the lives of Shui Mo and Ning Xuema again, and finally return to the celestial devil continent to seal the purple evil spirit, she was afraid that he would not want it, and he would not want it. He would try to stop the purple evil spirit from happening in this life. He would stop everything that was about to happen. With his ability, if he knew everything in advance, he would definitely be able to stop it. If that was the case, the lives of little Nianma and herself would not exist. His memories of Ning Xuema's 2 lifetimes would also gradually disappear. The Almighty who once accepted her as his disciple and was entangled with her for 2 lives would also be like the moon in the water, the flower in the mirror. He never existed at all. Thinking about it gave her a headache. She could not help but raise her hand to rub her eyebrows. At the very least, if the Almighty agreed with her thoughts, could she tell him everything? The heavenly law said, "Do not reveal the secrets of heaven. If you reveal it, it will change. If you change it, it will bring disaster." It was not just to scare her. If she told him everything, she was afraid that things would develop in a worse direction. In the world 50,000 years later, there was a little lotus growing in her Mo palace. Perhaps the Almighty would be reborn in it. If she revealed the secrets of heaven here, the little lotus might disappear directly. Then the Almighty would have no hope of coming back. Therefore there were some things that she could not say. She raised her hand to hit her temple. She just said that the Almighty was selfish and that he only wanted to stay in the present. In order to keep her, he would do anything. In fact, she was also selfish because she also wanted to stay in the present. She had the memories of 3 lives, the present with little Nianma, and the present with the Almighty for 3 lives. She did not want to lose the present. She sat there and thought. Unknowingly she was lost in her thoughts. A gust of cold wind blew a few leaves on her body and brought her back to her senses. She stood up and looked up at the sky. The sky was a little gloomy, and there were dark clouds rolling quickly in the sky. The sky was going to change. She turned and ran in the direction of the bedroom. If she was not mistaken, Shinjuli should be back there by now. It was better for her to talk to him calmly. She was very fast. In just a moment she had arrived at the door of Shinjuli's palace. She looked up and saw that the palace was still dark. Shinjuli had not returned. Ning Xuema's feet paused for a moment. She had transmigrated here several times and she would sleep here every night. This time, although she had a small conflict with Shinjuli, Ning Xuema did not want to sleep in another palace out of spite. She pushed the door. Not bad, the door opened easily. She walked in. There was a bed and a couch in the hall. Presumably, when Shinjuli and little Xuema were together, they slept separately even though they were in the same room. She paused for a moment before lying down on the small couch. It wasn't that she was putting on airs. After all, the two of them had just quarreled. If she slept on his bed again she would lose too much face. Where would he go? Study room? Side hall? Medicine refining room? Would he not be angry and not come back? The wind outside was getting stronger and stronger. There was a big tree outside the window. It was swaying in the wind and reflected on the window like a ghost. Although there were alternating seasons in the Fantian Palace, there were not many bad weather like wind and rain. Ning Xuema had lived in the Fantian Palace for a period of time. It was sunny almost every day. She did not expect that there would be such a strong wind here. Chapter 2020. Crack. There was another flash of lightning outside, which lit up the window and then dimmed again. Is it going to rain? Ning Xuema sat up as if to answer her. After the flash of lightning, it started to rain outside. It was raining cats and dogs. Lightning, heavy rain, and strong wind were raging outside the window. The rain was like a whip hitting the windowsill, making a loud sound as if the sky had exploded. The heavy rain reminded her of the 3 days when Shinjuli had just immortalized. It was also raining cats and dogs as if the whole world was crying for him. She had knelt in the heavy rain for 3 days and cried for 3 days. Since then she had a natural aversion to heavy rain. Sometimes she would even feel fear for no reason. The sound of the rain was like a whip on her heart, which made her nervous for no reason. He wouldn't come back in such a thunderstorm, right? However, he was a god. If he wanted to come back, this little bit of rain wouldn't be able to stop him. Was he injured or not? She was staggering when she walked. Maybe he was hiding somewhere to heal himself? Usually, he would hide in a quiet room where no one could find him to heal himself after he got injured. He should be hiding somewhere to heal himself and wouldn't come back. Countless guesses spun around in her mind. She was extremely tired today and at this moment she was so sleepy that her eyelids were drooping. She wanted to have a good rest, so she closed her eyes. It was strange that she couldn't fall asleep even though she was so sleepy. She couldn't help but listen to the sound of the door. The door was creaking due to the wind and rain, as if it was opening and closing with the sound of the wind. Ning Xuema then remembered that she didn't close the door when she came in. She jumped off the bed and ran around the screen to the outer room. She saw that the door was still open. The heavy rain had blown in and a large patch of the door was wet. The rainwater was flowing in the hall. God, Shinjuli loved cleanliness. If he saw that his bedroom was soaked, he would be even more unhappy. Ning Xuema knocked her head and scolded herself for being a pig. She ran to close the door. Crack. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky, landing right beside Ning Xuema's feet and exploding. If it wasn't for Ning Xuema seeing that the situation wasn't good and immediately jumping to avoid it, the lightning would have struck her head. Her heart was beating wildly. That shouldn't be necessary, right? Struck by lightning? She didn't do anything evil. The heavenly Tao still wouldn't let her go? The doors of the hall were blown open and closed by the wind as if they were haunted. The hall's door creaked as it was blown by the wind. It was quite annoying, so Ning Xuema closed it again. Unexpectedly, before her hand could touch the door, another bolt of lightning struck down. Ning Xuema was prepared this time and hurriedly dodged. Her head was full of black lines. This lightning really did strike her. Even if she was a devil master, she didn't need to receive such high-level treatment, right? The wind and rain outside were even heavier. Strangely enough, as long as Ning Xuema had the intention to close the door, the lightning would strike her head. It worked every time. The heavy rain wanted to enter the great shrine unimpeded, so it didn't allow her to close the door? Or was it that as long as she left the protection of the bedroom, the lightning would come and be good with her? Ning Xuema was also bored. She thought for a while and didn't close the door. Instead, she stood in front of the door. Thus, another bolt of lightning accurately struck her again. Ning Xuema took a step back and rubbed her eyebrows in distress. Sure enough, it struck her again. It seemed that she had offended the heavenly law stone so much that it always wanted to strike her. Chapter 2021. Luckily she was not outside. Otherwise she would have been chased by the lightning. This lightning was not the same as the normal lightning during a rainy day in the mortal world. It was more like the lightning from a tribulation. Ning Xuema had gone through a tribulation before, so she had an impression of it. Whether it was the brightness or the lethality, it was the same as the tribulation lightning. The only difference was that she could not avoid the tribulation lightning. This time, the lightning seemed to be afraid of Xinjiuli's house. When the lightning struck, as long as she dodged in time, she would not be affected. Strangely enough, as long as Ning Xuema did not stand at the door, the lightning would not appear again. Only the heavy rain would not stop. If she went out now and was struck by the tribulation lightning, would she be able to go back? Ning Xuema could not help but think about this problem again. She took 2 steps towards the door and stopped. Forget it. Xinjiuli was already thinking of a way. She did not need to take the risk to test this. If the lightning did not strike back and this body was damaged, it would not be good. She would also be sorry to Xinjiuli. However, the flashing door was really a headache. Ning Xuema thought about it and decided to use a spell to close it. Red light emerged from her fingertips to push the door. Unexpectedly, as soon as the red light touched the door, another extremely bright bolt of lightning struck down. This time the lightning was 10 times bigger than the previous ones. It was so bright that it almost blinded her eyes. What was even more frightening was that the lightning bolt was not aimed at Ning Xuema, who was behind the door, but at the red light at her fingertips. The red light was connected to her fingertips. Once it struck the red light, it would be transmitted directly to her body. Looking at the brightness, it was at least 1,000,000 volts. If she was struck by it, she would probably turn into a pile of ashes. Be careful. A figure flashed over and hit the red light on Ning Xuema's fingertips. Ning Xuema jumped in fright. Before she could react, that figure suddenly hugged her and rolled inwards. A series of claps of thunder resounded in her ears, exploding along with their rolling figures. The sound of thunder disappeared. The room fell into a short silence. Ning Xuema's heart was beating wildly. She was very familiar with Xinjiuli, so she recognized him as soon as he hugged her. Although she was being hugged and rolled around in a sorry state, the first thing that rose in her heart was joy, but then she was a little surprised. Her ears were buzzing from the series of thunder, but she couldn't care less. She couldn't help but hug him. Almighty you, why are you so wet? Are you hurt? The red light she sent out earlier was to close the door, so she didn't use much strength. Although the bullet hit Xinjiuli in the end, it shouldn't have hurt him. However, his body was too wet, as if he had been fished out of the water. When he hugged her and rolled on the floor just now, it was as if he was hugging an ice cube and rolling on the floor. An ominous premonition arose in her heart. As she spoke, she grabbed his wrist, wanting to see if he was injured. Xinjiuli suddenly let go of her and rolled to the side to avoid her touch. He silently sat up. Ning Xuema naturally sat up as well. The luminous pearl in the room wasn't turned on, so it was a little dark. Ning Xuema could only see his general outline, but couldn't see his real face. Ning Xuema simply ran to the table and opened the clamshell that hid the luminous pearl. The room was finally filled with soft light, and Xinjiuli's sorry state was revealed. His long hair was tied up, and the rainwater flowed down his lapel. Chapter 2022. His long hair was tied up and the rain was flowing down his clothes. His clothes were sticking to his body, and there was a puddle of water where he was standing. Ning Xuema finally got a clear look at his face, and her heart suddenly sank. His face was blue and even his lips were pale. It was very abnormal. He was really injured. And his injury was not light. Ning Xuema felt a sudden pain in her heart. It was as if someone had pricked her with a needle. It was probably the first time he was so embarrassed in front of her, and he stepped back into the shadows. However, Ning Xuema grabbed his wrist, causing his body to stiffen and stop. Ning Xuema checked his pulse for a while and she was a little angry. You are so seriously injured and it is raining so heavily. What are you doing here? Shinjuli's voice was cold. Why did you run to the door for no reason? I closed the door. The wind is making the door creak and it is uncomfortable to listen to. Uncomfortable to listen to, but it is better than standing at the door and being struck by lightning, right? Shinjuli was speechless. Can't you be a little more quiet? Stay in the room? As he spoke, he went to close the door of the hall. He closed the door tightly, shutting out the wind and rain in the hall. When he turned around, he saw Ning Xuema standing there and looking at him with her big eyes. He was stunned. You? She still hasn't given up? She still wants to go out and be struck by lightning? This is a tribulation lightning. If you are struck by it, you will lose your life. He explained to her in a low voice, not wanting to see her do something stupid again. I didn't want to go out and be struck by lightning. I just went to close the door. Ning Xuema couldn't help but explain again. Shinjuli was silent for a moment and he didn't say anything. Were you originally healing somewhere else and you rushed back when you heard the thunder? Did you do it for me? Shinjuli paused and interrupted her coldly. I was just afraid that the hall would be flooded. He turned around and walked into the hall. Ning Xuema pursed her lips and followed him into the inner hall. The inner hall was the real bedroom. Ning Xuema was also a little wet from the rain just now. The heavy rain this time was quite strange. When they first got wet, it was just a little cold, but it was still bearable. But now, for some reason, it was getting colder and colder. The parts that were drenched by the rain were as cold as ice. The coldness seemed to be able to seep into one's bones through one's wet clothes. She couldn't help but shudder. She had only gotten a little wet and she was already so cold. What if he was completely drenched? Ning Xuema's gaze landed on him again. He was originally dressed in white, but at this moment, there seemed to be a faint flash on his white clothes. It was like ice. Without another word, she used her magic power to cover his body, wanting to dry him first. However, he didn't expect a red light to cover him. After the red light dissipated, his body was still wet, and the water was still dripping down. How could this be? Logically speaking, if she used this cleansing spell, even if he just came out of the water, he would be refreshed in an instant. How could it not work? Could it be that her power had regressed? Ning Xuema didn't give up. When she was about to use it again, Shinjuli walked away. Don't bother. This rain can't be dried with magic. He walked towards the closet, where there were a few sets of clothes to change. It turned out that the rain in Fantian Palace could be so unique. Ning Xuema was speechless. He was seriously injured and he came here in the rain. He was so wet that he couldn't just change his clothes. Ning Xuema waved her hand and a big bathtub appeared. There was steam coming out of the bathtub. Chapter 2023. Don't be in a hurry to change your clothes. You should take a bath first to get rid of the cold. Ning Xuema tugged at his sleeve. Shinjuli lifted his sleeve and quietly avoided her. He turned around to look at the steaming bathtub and then looked at her, who was staring at him. Finally he said, "Thank you." He turned around and pulled the screen next to him and circled it around the bathtub. Then he took out a set of robes from the closet and walked behind the screen. Ning Xuema was speechless. She was somewhat stupefied by his words. She stood there for a moment and couldn't help but shake her head. Thank you was a nice word, but when used between lovers, it made people feel like they were distancing themselves from each other. It seemed that she was the one who said it first. Now that he had smashed it back, the damage was quite great. The screen was very thick and almost opaque. Behind the screen there was a rustling sound. Obviously, Shinjuli was taking off his clothes. Ning Xuema sat on the small bed and looked at the screen in a daze. She had already lost count of how many times they had rolled in bed. He was especially nimble in taking off her clothes, often peeling off her clothes like a dumpling. She was also familiar with his body, and she could even remember clearly what his abs and abs looked like. Now there were only the two of them in the hall. Was he afraid that she would peek when he was taking a bath? Or was he deliberately using this to distance himself from her? There was the sound of water splashing behind the screen. Obviously he had entered the water. Ning Xuema's heart was in a mess. She lay on the small bed with her clothes on and listened to the sound of the wind and rain outside. When Shinjuli didn't come back, she felt a little desolate lying alone and listening to the wind and rain. Now that he was behind the screen, she felt inexplicably at ease. She listened to his movements. His body was so cold that she was afraid that the hot water she put in would soon turn cold. Do you want me to heat up the water for you? After a while, Ning Xuema spoke to the person behind the screen. There's no need. He answered with a nasal voice. Did he catch a cold? Ning Xuema thought for a while and walked around the screen. Let me see. As she spoke, she had already seen the big bathtub. Naturally, she also saw the person in the bathtub. Shinjuli was soaking in it, only his shoulders were exposed. His face was still pale, but his eyes were extremely deep. Seeing her walk in, his thin lips slightly pursed. Get out. His voice was cold. Ning Xuema didn't look at him and said, Don't worry, I'm not here to take advantage of you. She stretched out her hand and waved it in the water. Sure enough, the water turned cold and almost turned into ice. Ning Xuema was speechless. His gaze then fell on his face. His face was still extremely pale, and the skin exposed above the water was faintly green. She reached out to touch his shoulder and her fingertips froze. His skin was as cold as a dead person's. Shinjuli's body shrank back slightly to avoid her wolf claws. It was probably the first time that he was looked at like this while soaking in a bath. His thin lips tightened. Get out. His voice seemed to be filled with ice. She had only been in for a short while and had already been driven away by him twice. If Ning Xuema was thin-skinned, she would probably have left. But now she pretended that she didn't hear him. She withdrew her fingers from his body and then sat cross-legged in front of the bathtub. She pressed her palms on the bathtub and used her psyche power to heat the water in the bathtub. She lowered her eyes slightly. She looked calm on the surface, but her heart felt as if it had been pricked by a sharp needle. Chapter 2024. It seemed that Shinjuli was seriously injured this time. He could not even heat the water and his body was so cold. The white light emitted by the heavenly law was also so rude to the guardian. How is your injury? Ning Xuema finally heated the water in the bathtub and could not help but ask. I will not die. Shinjuli replied with 3 words. Ning Xuema choked. Did he have to talk to her like that? After all, she felt guilty toward him. Even if he was angry with her, she pretended not to see it. She tried to reason with him. You may have misunderstood me. It is not that I don't want to stay by your side. It is that Nianma is in danger over there. She was about to tell him about Luo Jiuchen's coercion and the tricks that she had used. Unexpectedly, her mind suddenly went blank and she did not know how to continue. At the same time, the words appeared in her mind again. Do not reveal the secrets of heaven. If you reveal them, it will change. If it changes, it will bring disaster. Ning Xuema was speechless. She understood the meaning of the words very well. If she told him these things at this time, the development of these things would change and it would only be worse. These things involved little Nianma. Naturally, she did not want to make the situation worse for her son, so she kept quiet. Luo Jiuchen once promised that he would not do anything to hurt her and her son, but it did not mean that he would not send someone to do it. Little Nianma was still so young. How could he be the opponent of that old fox? She was afraid that he would be tortured to death in minutes. Thinking of this, she was anxious and could not wait to go back immediately. Unfortunately, she was locked in here and could not go back. Did Luo Jiuchen harm you and your son? Shinjuli suddenly asked. Ning Xuema paused for a moment. Just as she was about to answer with a yes, those words appeared again. It appeared again. She answered vaguely, that person is too evil. Then, Xuema, have you ever thought that in this era we can take precautions before they happen? Shinjuli spoke slowly. His gaze finally fell on her face. You don't have to go back to that era. Since it will happen 50,000 years later, we have enough time to change everything. So much so that those disasters can't even happen in time, right? Ning Xuema closed her eyes. It's different. You might not believe me, but the time there, she was just about to say, time is synchronized, but unexpectedly, those words flashed in her mind again. Ning Xuema. Tinji. Heavenly secret, you bastard. Shinjuli was still waiting for her to continue. How's the time there? Ning Xuema took a deep breath and said, Great God, the heavenly axiom on your side doesn't allow me to reveal the secrets of the heavens. Otherwise it would only make things worse. Therefore there are some things that I can't say. I didn't mean to hide it from you, Shinjuli. Although he was the guardian of the heavenly axiom, this was the first time he had encountered a situation like Ning Xuema's. His gaze fell on her face. He was a little suspicious. You received a hint from the heavenly axiom stone? Logically speaking, the words on the Heavenly Axiom Stone could only be obtained by the guardian of the Heavenly Axiom Stone through a secret technique. No one else could get a hint from the Heavenly Axiom Stone. However, Ning Xuema actually said that she received it. Ning Xuema pursed her lips. It's not a hint. It's a warning. Alright, after all, she came from the future. She would definitely know a lot of things that would happen. It was understandable that the Heavenly Axiom prevented her from saying it. Chapter 2025. She grabbed his hand and looked at him. Almighty God, I really have my own difficulties. I can't leave little Nianma. You loved him so much at that time. She felt like crying when she said this. The Almighty God in this world had no impression of little Nianma. However, the Almighty God in the future loved little Nianma so much that he arranged so many things for the child before he died. At that time, Shinjuli whispered, was it the me in the future? Ning Xuema was stunned and nodded. In fact, you still like the me in the future, right? Ning Xuema was speechless. She could not deny it. After I immortalized 50,000 years later, I left you and the child behind. You wanted to find me, but in the end you traveled to the past and met me in the present, right? Ning Xuema was speechless. Yes. Then, if the me in the future did not exist, would you still like the me now? Shinjuli stared at her eyes and said something that was a little confusing. Ning Xuema was speechless. If she did not have a grudge with the Shinjuli in the future for 2 lifetimes, she would look for him everywhere after he immortalized. Then, if she somehow traveled to 50,000 years ago and met him again, she would not give herself to him so quickly. Perhaps she would find a way to escape from him. She took a deep breath and said, there is no such assumption. In fact, I knew you in the future first. Shinjuli's eyelashes drooped slightly. So, she loved him now because he took advantage of his future self in the future. In her mind, he was just a substitute of himself in the future. Shinjuli never thought that one day he would be jealous of himself. It was true. He had always been proud. Naturally, he did not want to be anyone's substitute. Even if he was to be his substitute in the future, he still felt very uncomfortable. He withdrew his hand that she had been holding tightly and closed his eyes slightly. Get out. For a moment, Ning Xuema couldn't figure out what he was thinking. She tried to explain, Great deity, you have to find a way to send me back first. Once I'm done with the matters on the other side, I'll come back here for a while. She still had to find a way to change her fate, so she had to come back. Is this transmigration something you can decide on your own? Shinjuli's voice was slightly cold. Ning Xuema. No. She didn't want to lie to him. Every time she transmigrated, it was out of her control. She didn't even know what was going on. What if I can't transmigrate again after leaving this time? Can you bear to part with me? Shinjuli's words became sharper and sharper. I don't think so. I've been transmigrating quite frequently recently. You offended the Heavenly Tao. In order to punish you, the Heavenly Tao might make you unable to transmigrate again. Then, you might not be able to see the current me again. Do you still insist on leaving? Ning Xuema. She paused for a moment before saying, I'll try my best to come back. Even if I can't come back, I'll try to resurrect you. The person you want to resurrect is me 50,000 years later, right? Ning Xuema pursed her lips and couldn't say anything. Shinjuli closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, his eyes were like a dark lake. He was calm. If you leave again, you don't have to come back. I don't want to be anyone's substitute. Ning Xuema. She felt a sourness in her chest that rushed to her eyes. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to explain something, but she didn't know where to start. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.